Chapter 706. The time of the underground fighting tournament was 8 p.m., and the guests arrived one after another, filling up all the seats in the auditorium before 7:30 p.m. The number of people was not a lot, but there were still about 400 to 500 people. Tan Xiao had never participated in this kind of underground fighting tournament before, so he didn't understand some of the underlying rules of the underground fighting tournament, such as gambling and the blackboard. "Brother Tang, how much do you want to bet?" Li Laozhan asked curiously as he wiped his greasy face. Tan Xiao stared blankly and asked with a puzzled expression, "What do you mean?" Li Laozhan said, "Place your bets. Don't tell me you don't want to play?" Tan Xiao didn't answer him directly, but frowned and asked, "Can I bet while watching the underground fighting tournament?" Li Laozhan rolled his eyes and looked speechless. Chu Xueqing, who was sitting on his other side, smiled and explained, "It seems that Brother Tang rarely participates in this kind of underground fighting tournament. As a matter of fact, the main purpose of each session of the underground fighting tournament is to provide some rich people with the opportunity to bet. Everyone had the dream of being a Wuxia. If they didn't have the ability, they would bet a large sum of money on the fighters they fancied, to fight in the ring for them, to spill blood, and to stimulate the boiling blood in their bodies. To put it bluntly, it's just looking for excitement." Tan Xiao suddenly understood, and was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. "I've never participated in an underground fighting tournament before, so I really don't understand it. Are you going to bet, brothers?" "That's right. I've bet on more than a dozen matches. How can I not play in the finals?" Li Laozhan proudly said. "I'm optimistic about the boxers. His golden iron fist is a powerhouse whose strength is almost beyond the Grandmaster realm. Not only do I want to bet that he can rush to the top 2, but I also want to bet that he can win the championship." "I don't think so." Chu Xueqing shook his head and smilingly said, "Golden Iron Fist is indeed born with divine strength, and his punching technique is even more exquisite. He can inflict heavy damage to his opponents in every match, but his style is too firm and fierce, and he's bound to fall into a bitter struggle once he encounters a soft move. And it just so happens that one of the 4 boxers is Ladyboy Wu Tong. Her silk hand and 18 tan kicks are the perfect counter to Golden Radiant Iron Fist. If the 2 of them were to fight, it would be hard to say who would win." Tan Xiao said, "I heard that there is a boxer named Li Tong. Is he very powerful?" Li Laozhan and Chu Xueqing looked at each other, and shook their heads in unison. "Brother Tang, Li Tong is indeed very powerful," said Li Laozhan. "He has broken through to the martial arts Grandmaster realm many years ago. Furthermore, his martial art style is ruthless and his moves are tricky and strange. It's fine if he doesn't fight, but once he does, blood will definitely be seen, and he'll either die or be crippled. But I think he's still not as good as Iron Fist Jin Kan and Ladyboy Wu Tong." Tan Xiao nodded silently. Li Laozhan asked again, "Brother Tang, you haven't said whether you want to play or not." "I'm going to the backstage to place my bets. Do you want to come with me?" Tan Xiao nodded and said, "Since all of you are playing, then I'll also join in. Jimu, what about you?" "The most important thing is to participate." "Let's go together," said Jimu quickly. Quickly, the 4 of them came to the backstage. Inside a long and wide table, more than a dozen staff responsible for handling the business were busy, while more than a dozen stalwart men stood everywhere, responsible for guarding the place. On the other hand, a charming lady was constantly greeting the guests who placed their bets. "Boss Li, Boss Chu, welcome to the 2 of you to place your bets. I've never seen these 2 handsome little brothers before. Are you also here to place your bets?" Upon seeing the arrival of the 4, her eyes immediately lit up and greeted them. Li Laozhan laughed aloud and said, "That's only natural. It's such a good opportunity. It's simply a reckless waste of God's gifts and a waste. Black Widow, I'll bet." Suddenly, Li Laozhan realized something and quickly turned to look at Tan Xiao, asking, "Brother Tang, you haven't said who you're going to choose yet." "Han Qinggu," Tan Xiao calmly said. Li Laozhan stared blankly, while Chu Xueqing also wore a strange expression. In their opinion, Han Qingwu being able to rush to the last 2 matches was already beyond their expectations. They didn't expect that Tan Xiao would choose her. Li Laozhan squinted his eyes as he deeply observed Tan Xiao. Then he immediately looked at Black Widow and asked, "Black Widow, what's the odds for Han Qinggu?" 7-1, said Black Widow with a smile. Li Laozhan immediately scratched the back of his head. The amount he was going to bet this time was not small. It was 100 million. If he lost, he would still feel distressed even if he had a big family business. However, he recalled Tan Xiu's terrifying strength and identity. After hesitating for a moment, he directly took out his bank card and handed it to Black Widow, saying, "I'll also bet that Han Qinggu can win. 50 million for the first match and 50 million for the second match." Black Widow looked surprised, but she still nodded and quickly swiped the card for Li Laozhan. Soon, she handed a receipt to Li Laozhan. Chu Xueqing furrowed his brows. He didn't understand why Li Laozhan suddenly changed his mind. It must be known that a bet of 100 million didn't have much impact on them. But if they were to lose for no reason, they would still feel distressed. Could it be he did it because of Tan Xiu? Li Xueqing stared at Tan Xiu for a while before he finally chose transvestite Wu Tong, whom he favored, and also bet 100 million. Tan Xiu's processing speed was very fast. Ji Mu regarded Tan Xiu as a celestial being, so he naturally also bet on Han Qinggu. He had spent a lot of money recently and only had 20 million left, so he bet all of it. "Brother Tang, you're really bold. You even dare to bet 100 million. It seems that I, old Li, can count the money with you today," said Li Laozhan with a smile. Li Laozhan said with a smile. However, his laughter was a bit weak, indicating that he was still a little skeptical about Han Qingwu's ability to win the competition. Soon after, the four of them returned to their original seats in the auditorium and quietly waited for the start of the underground fighting match. They were not in a hurry since they had already bet the money. From time to time, their eyes would fall on the rich guests in the auditorium. Occasionally, they would see some familiar friends, but they just nodded to greet them. At the entrance, Zhou Cheng and Chen Shuai came together. Although they had been slapped several times by Ji Mu, the swelling on their faces had subsided a lot after they used ice cubes to cold compress them. "Are you going to bet, Zhou Cheng?" Chen Shuai didn't have much money at hand, so he wanted to throw 1 million to play. He knew that Zhou Cheng was very rich, but he didn't know how big the bet would be. "I'll take out 5 million to play." Zhou Cheng nodded and said, "It's fine if I lose, but it's best if I can win. I'm not happy today, so I'll see some blood later, so I can vent some of my depression." Chen Shuai nodded and glanced at the audience in the hall a few times. Coincidentally, just as he was about to retract his gaze, he suddenly saw Tang Xiu and Ji Mu's faces. "Zhou Cheng, look at the right back corner." Zhou Cheng looked over in surprise. When he saw Tan Xiu and Ji Mu, his expression suddenly turned a bit unsightly, and he cursed inwardly for being unlucky. Still, he pretended that he didn't see anything and quickly followed the attendant to get his number, and then went backstage to place his bet. What made the two of them helpless was that there were no seats left in the auditorium since they came too late, so they could only stand in the back and watch. At 8 o'clock sharp, when the woman called Black Widow by Li Laozhan came to the ring in the middle of the auditorium, she held the microphone and smiled brightly. She looked around and smilingly said, "Welcome to the final of this year's underground fighting competition. I'm Black Widow, and also the host of today's underground fighting competition. First of all, I'd like to introduce the 4 contestants today. As a matter of fact, I'm sure everyone knows about these 4 boxers. Some of you are not unfamiliar with them and are very familiar with them. Now let's welcome the first boxer." Before her voice faded away, a strong middle-aged man came out from the backstage passage. He had several scars on his face that looked like a centipede crawling on it, making him look particularly ferocious. "Savage Beast Li Tong." Many tycoons in the auditorium shouted out loud. Li Tong, also known as Savage Beast, was synonymous with ferocity. Just his name alone could stimulate many people to bet on him winning. Coupled with his previous boxing style, nearly half of the tycoons who came here bet on him winning the match. "Tonight is bloodthirsty day. My opponent will either die or be crippled." Li Tong came to the ring and fiercely waved his fists a few times as he roared loudly. The tycoons in the auditorium who bet on him winning immediately followed suit. Many of them were infected by Li Tong's confidence. They even tore apart the hypocritical side of the business world and revealed their ferocious emotions. The second one. It was Wu Tong the sorcerer. He was a man, but not a man at the same time. After undergoing a sex change, he could only be said to be a half-man half-woman sorcerer, which was very fitting to his name. I'll kill anyone who stands in my way to become the champion. A gloomy voice came out of Wu Tong's mouth. His eyes emitted a chilling light. Every tycoon who met his gaze felt as though they were being stared at by a viper, making their hair stand on end and sending chills down their backs. The third one. It was Jin Kan the Iron Fist. He was very arrogant and very arrogant. As soon as he got on the ring, he tore his robe to shreds, exposing his bronze upper body as he roared loudly, "I'm Jin Kan, and I have an iron fist. Tonight in the arena, I will twist off their heads, tear off their limbs, dig out their hearts, and eat them right in front of you. Jin Kan. Iron Fist, Iron Fist." Countless shouts and shouts loudly cheered for him. The tycoons who bet on him also stood up and waved their fists, their blood boiling. The fourth one. It was Han Qinggu. She wore a training suit with her long hair tied up, looking valiant and heroic. She walked to the back of the ring with a cold expression and looked around. When she found Tan Xiao behind the auditorium, a smile suddenly appeared on the corner of her mouth and she said in a clear voice, "My opponent today is not them, but me. If I win, I'll leave standing up. If I lose, I'll leave lying down." This time, not many tycoons responded. After all, many people were not optimistic about her. 60% of those who bet on her winning were related to her appearance. Chapter 707. At the back of the auditorium, Zhou Cheng and Chen Shuai were dumbfounded as they looked at Han Qinggu. A chill ran down their spines and straight to the back of their heads. Aside from the different clothes, there was no mistaking her figure and appearance. The two of them recalled the scene when they went to strike up a conversation with her. Recalling their actions of finding fault with her, they were so scared that they nearly peed their pants. It feels so good to be alive. Chen Shuai's throat squirmed as he wiped the cold sweat on his forehead with his trembling right hand. He simply couldn't imagine it. If Han Qinggu were to act against them in the Red House, they would probably be left with half of their lives at the very most, even if they didn't die. Zhou Cheng unbuttoned his shirt, as though he wanted to release the repressed feeling in his chest. Although Ji Mu had slapped him a few times and made him regret provoking Han Qinggu, this was the moment he regretted the most. He couldn't afford to provoke such a ruthless character, who could participate in the underground fighting tournament, and fight all the way to the finals. Chen Shuai, I used to hate Ji Mu a bit, but now I don't hate him anymore. I even feel grateful to him. I also feel the same way. Chen Shuai nodded with lingering fear. He recalled that if they had provoked Han Qinggu would have beaten them to death if she had acted against them. In the ring, with a smile on her face, Black Widow introduced the 4 contestants. Then, she called a beautiful girl to take the well-sealed box and placed it in the center of the ring. She then said with a smile, "There are a total of 4 poker cards in this box, 2 jokers and 2 jokers. Each of the 4 contestants will draw 1 card. Jokers will fight against jokers, and jokers will fight against jokers. The winner will participate in the final match." Lots were drawn. It was a very fair grouping method, so the 4 contestants had no objection. The results quickly came out. Han Qinggu and Fierce Beast Li Tong drew the jokers, while Iron Fist Jin Kan and Ladyboy Wu Tong drew the jokers. After Black Widow announced the grouping, she let the 4 contestants go backstage to prepare. The first round was the Jokers group, and the second round was the Jokers group. The Jokers group would begin at 8:30, and the contestants had 20 minutes to prepare. In the auditorium, Li Laozhan slightly furrowed his brows as he watched Han Qinggu leave. He couldn't figure out why Tan Xiao would choose Han Qinggu. He had watched dozens of previous matches and knew Han Qinggu's fighting prowess. Although she wasn't weak, whether it was in terms of strength or speed, she was considered one of the best. However, during the competition, she revealed her greatest weakness, mercy. In this kind of underground fighting competition, one would either be injured or killed. However, in the dozen or so fights that Han Qinggu participated in, the most seriously injured opponent only had a few broken ribs and a crippled arm. Tang Xiao. and she of the match. Of Yang Xiao. Tang Group and she. Li Laozhan didn't want his 100 million yuan to go down the drain, so he hesitated and shouted. However, he regretted it right after. He had already made up his mind, and doubting Tang Xiao at this time wouldn't look good. Tang Xiao glanced at Li Laozhan and lightly smiled. Don't worry. You know Han Qinggu? Tang Xiao glanced at Li Laozhan and said with a light smile. I came with her this time. Otherwise I wouldn't have known about the underground boxing match, said Tang Xiao. Li Laozhan's restless heart immediately calmed down. He rubbed his hands and said with a grin, Hee, since I came with you, brother Tang, then I can rest assured. Li Laozhan's restless heart immediately calmed down. He rubbed his hands and grinned. Hee, since I came with you, brother Tang, I can say that I've taken a tranquilizer. Li Laozhan's restless heart immediately calmed down. He rubbed his hands and said with a smile, Hee, I can rest assured since I came with you, brother Tang. Losing money is just a small matter, and I'll definitely be laughed at by old Chu. He couldn't figure out why Li Laozhan was so convinced by Tang Xiao. At 8:30, Han Qinggu was still in her original attire. She wore a black exercise suit, and came to the arena from the backstage valiantly. Facing Li Tong, who had a cruel look on his face, her expression was cold. There was no fear or contempt. Her eyes swept over Tang Xiao and then fell on the host, Black Widow. Black Widow didn't speak any nonsense and directly announced the start of the boxing match and immediately left the ring. If it was a regular boxing match, the referee would stay in the ring and use the so-called rules to restrain the boxers. However, there were no rules at all in this kind of underground fighting competition. Once in the ring, not to mention all kinds of despicable and shameless means could be used. Even using weapons was not a problem, as long as firearms and other firearms were not used. Li Tong licked his lips and unscrupulously sized up Han Qinggu. He then grinned and said, Ice Phoenix Han Qinggu, it's really not easy for me to meet such a top-notch woman like you in this underground boxing match. But if you directly admit defeat, I, Li Tong, will still have tender and protective feelings for the fairer sex. Han Qinggu coldly said, Cut the crap. Let's see who's the real deal. Li Tong grinned and said, Since you don't know the meaning of death, then don't blame me for ruthlessly destroying a flower. Han Qinggu didn't speak again. Her elegant body instantly dashed and appeared in front of Li Tong in the blink of an eye. The true essence in her body gurgled and flowed through the meridians all over her body. Humph! Li Tong didn't have the slightest worry. He was very excited after he drew the same team as Han Qinggu. He had watched Han Qinggu's matches and knew that although this woman's speed and strength were quite good, she was a soft-hearted person. If he were to fight with others, even if he could win the match, it would probably be a Pyrrhic victory. But as long as he could defeat Han Qinggu, he didn't have to worry about being seriously injured and unable to participate in the next match. His toes stepped on the ground and his legs tightened. In an instant he whipped his leg like a lightning bolt. As his body flew up, the moment Han Qinggu dodged, the shadow of his leg joined together. It seemed that he wouldn't give up until he kicked Han Qinggu. Bam! After more than 10 seconds of attacks, Han Qinggu's arm was finally hit. But amidst the pain, Han Qinggu also kicked Li Tong's calf while her body was swaying. Go to hell! Li Tong didn't want to be entangled in a fight, because he still had another match. After a short attack he didn't gain any advantage, which immediately aroused his fierceness. His body was like a hungry tiger pouncing on its prey. He instantly waved his fist and smashed it toward Han Qinggu's head. His right hand instantly grabbed a dagger from his waist. He was confident that as long as Han Qinggu dared to take his heavy punch, he would stab her head with the dagger. A cold glint flickered in Han Qinggu's eyes. She could see that Li Tong, who was using a weapon, wanted to kill her. She immediately moved her feet. While her body was dashing forward, she also leaned back. Her palm slapped Li Tong's incoming fist, but the fingers of her left hand slid under Li Tong's armpit. Puff! The direction of Li Tong's fist deviated, and the following dagger also shifted in an instant, narrowly passing through Han Qinggu's temple hair. Li Tong's body suddenly trembled. A clear wound appeared on his armpit. No one noticed that when Han Qinggu's fingers swept past Li Tong's armpit, A burst of true essence had been shot into the acupuncture point in the wound, turning over and hammering. At the moment when Li Tong's body trembled, Han Qinggu had already completed the whole set of movements smoothly. Her seemingly tender fist fiercely bombarded the left side of Li Tong's neck. Crack. Although Li Tong's body was as hard as iron, his neck was still smashed by Han Qinggu's punch. That huge body also flew in the air with the sound of broken bones and heavily smashed on the ground of the arena 5 or 6 meters away. What's going on? How could it be? This. In the auditorium, a large number of rich people who had bet on Li Tong to win the match had their complexions greatly changed, and they couldn't help but cry out involuntarily. They hadn't seen Li Tong ruthlessly destroying a flower, nor had they seen an outstanding beauty being bled by Li Tong, nor had they seen her being torn into 2 halves in the back row. A smile appeared on Tan Xiu's handsome face. He was also a bit surprised. He didn't expect that Han Qinggu could unexpectedly release her true essence. It must be noted that only cultivators who had reached the foundation establishment stage could release their true essence. It was a bit unexpected that Han Qinggu, who was obviously at the late stage of qi refining stage, was able to do this. However, she won, and it was an easy victory. Li Laozhan suddenly turned his head and looked at Tan Xiu with a pleasantly surprised expression. How did Han Qinggu suddenly become so strong? It hasn't even been half a minute, right? She won just like that? Han Qinggu has received professional training and learned killing moves, said Tan Xiu with a faint smile. But she's not a bloodthirsty person. She probably didn't go all out in the previous matches. In fact, Li Tong is also very powerful. Whether it's his speed or strength, I'm afraid that ordinary martial arts grandmasters can't compare with him. However, he underestimated Han Qingwu's strength and guessed wrongly about Han Qingwu's determination. In fact, if he hadn't taken out that dagger, he might have been able to persist for a bit longer and was unlikely to be killed. Li Laozhan blinked and instantly understood Tan Xiu's meaning. Savage beast Li Tong was courting death. At the side, Chu Xueqing's complexion didn't look good. Although he had chosen Shimei Wu Tong, Han Qingwu's combat power was really beyond his expectation. He was also a person who advocated martial arts. Although his skill was not as good as Li Laozhan's, his vision was still very sharp. Who would have thought that Han Qinggu, whom he was most pessimistic about, would unexpectedly win the first match and directly kill savage beast Li Tong? What surprised him the most was that Han Qinggu killed Li Tong so easily. From the beginning to the end, it seemed that it didn't even take half a minute. Could it be that Han Qinggu can really become the final champion? Chu Xueqing glanced at Li Laozhan before his eyes fell on Tan Xiu. After observing for a long time, he revealed a bitter smile and secretly shook his head. The boxing match was not over yet, and he didn't want to see such an ending. Therefore, he secretly cheered for Shimei Wu Tong in his heart. Others might not be aware of it, but he was perfectly aware that Shimei Wu Tong didn't go all out in the previous boxing match. In the past, he had seen Ladyboy Wu Tong fight, and it was outside the arena of the underground fighting competition. At that time, Shimei Wu Tong was simply a crazy killing god. Chapter 708. The next match will be Ladyboy Wu Tong's turn. If he can win the match smoothly, that would be for the best. If it's a Pyrrhic victory, I'm afraid the final champion will be Han Qinggu. Chu Xueqing thought to himself. In another direction, at the back of the auditorium, Zhou Chong and Chen Shuai looked at each other in dismay. Their hearts seemed to have fallen into ice, and their expressions became extremely ugly. It's good to be alive. My feelings towards this sentence have deepened. Chen Shuai touched his neck and said bitterly. Zhou Chong had a complicated expression on his face as he said, "He's too strong. He's definitely not a weakling to be able to make it to the final 4 of the underground fighting competition." However, that fierce beast Li Tong didn't even last half a minute before it was killed by the woman surnamed Han. Marshal Chen, I suddenly feel very grateful to Ji Mu. If it weren't for his timely appearance, I'm afraid we. At this point he could not continue. However, Chen Shuai understood what he meant. He took a deep breath and said, "Let's contact Ji Mu immediately after watching the match. Let's treat him to supper and thank him." "All right." Zhou Chong nodded silently. Chen Shuai asked, "Ji Mu is our savior. Shouldn't we give him some gifts as thanks? Zhou Cheng thought for a moment and said, since we want to thank him, we should indeed give him a gift. After the match, let's discuss and see what kind of gift is suitable. I heard that Ji Mu has been buying precious medicinal herbs in the past 2 days. Chen Shuai's expression suddenly changed as he lowered his voice and said, why would Ji Mu buy precious herbs? Zhou Cheng was puzzled. Was he not feeling well? Or a family member? I don't know. Chen Shuai shook his head and said, it's just hearsay. I'm not sure if it's true or not. However, after watching the match, I'll ask a friend. If it's true, we'll cater to his tastes and get him some precious medicinal herbs. No problem. Zhou Cheng nodded thoughtfully. Black Widow stood below the arena and watched helplessly as vicious beastly Tong was killed in less than half a minute. Her heart could not help but tremble a few times. She was also an expert. Although she had not even reached the realm of martial arts grandmaster, she was still shocked by the ruthlessness. Terrifying. So Ice Phoenix Han Qinggu hasn't been going all out. She shifted her gaze from Han Qinggu to Li Tong, who had fallen to the ground and twitched a few times. She sighed inwardly and went back to the arena. After checking Li Tong's condition, she got up and came to Han Qingwu's side, applauded and said, Ice Phoenix Han Qingwu, you're really good at concealing yourself. I hereby announce that vicious beastly Tong has died tragically, and the winner is Han Qingwu. Ice Phoenix Han Qingwu, you can go backstage and rest for a while. The second match will begin at 10 o'clock. Han Qingwu nodded and glanced in the direction of Tan Xiao. After replying, she turned around and left the arena. The second match. After Iron Fist Jin Kan and Shimei Wutong came to the arena, their fighting spirit was very high. Even Tan Xiao, who was sitting at the back of the auditorium, turned his head to glance at Chu Xueqing after observing them. He lightly smiled and said, Brother Chu's vision is really good. Shimei Wutong may look weak, but he's definitely very powerful. Also, the number of people who have died in his hands should be quite a lot. You're joking, Brother Tang. Chu Xueqing forced a wry smile and said, there's no way he can be compared with you. You favored Han Qingwu, but Han Qingwu easily killed vicious beastly Tong, and didn't even affect the second match. Shimei Wutong may be powerful, but even if he can defeat Iron Fist Jin Kan, I'm afraid he'll be badly injured and his vitality will be greatly damaged. I'm afraid he'll lose the second match with Han Qingwu. Tan Xiao smiled and didn't speak again. If Han Qingwu didn't want to kill, then so be it. As long as she made up her mind to kill, she would definitely win the championship. Tang Xiao had confidence in Han Qingwu, and he was even more confident in the experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall. He believed that Han Qingwu's strength would definitely be very formidable after being guided by those experts. Sure enough, the fight ended very slowly. Iron Fist Jin Kan and Shimei Wutong fought for more than 10 minutes before the outcome was decided. The final winner was Shimei Wutong. But after killing Iron Fist Jin Kan, he was also scarred and suffered serious internal injuries. At 10 p.m., when Black Widow stood on the arena again, her face didn't look good and even faintly looked angry. Holding the microphone, she suppressed her anger and said, next is the finals. Ice Phoenix Han Qingwu and Shimei Wutong, please come to the stage. After a while, both of them were already standing on the arena. Black Widow held her breath and fiercely glared at Shimei Wutong, who had just dealt with his external injuries. Then she said in a deep voice, I'm too lazy to talk nonsense with you. I hereby announce the start of the match. Wutong shot a deep look at Han Qingwu. He then shook his head and said, my friends who bet on me to win, I apologize to everyone. My injuries are very serious, and it's very difficult for me to fight the second match. So I admit defeat. What? You admit defeat just like that? What kind of joke is this? The last match of this underground fighting tournament is also the one I've been looking forward to the most. Yet it ended just like that? This daddy's gambling stake is no less than 50 million. Wutong, if you admit defeat, I'll find a way to kill you. Fight me. You gotta make me bleed. What a spineless coward. I'm so regretful. Many rich people in the audience stood up and cursed loudly with angry expressions. Many of them even directly threatened Wutong. Wutong didn't stay for long. Even though he was very strong, he still couldn't withstand the anger of so many rich people. He was perfectly aware of his own situation. Only death awaited him if he continued to fight. Those rich people might attack him after the match, but he was confident that he could save his life. At worst, he could just leave China. Han Qingwu was very surprised. She didn't expect that Wu Tong would directly choose to admit defeat. She originally thought that she wouldn't use her killer move if Wu Tong didn't have the intention to kill her. But now, it seemed that her victory was already a foregone conclusion. In the audience, Li Laozhan glanced at the ashen-faced Chu Xueqing and immediately burst into laughter. Old Chu, I never thought that I, old Li, would have such good luck today. Not only did I bump into Brother Tang here, but I also earned 600 to 700 million yuan for nothing. It's great. It's really great. Brother Tang, let's not talk anymore. Let's go backstage to exchange the money first, and then I, old Li, will treat you to a drink. A smile appeared on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. The reason why he followed Han Qingwu to Changxi this time was because he was afraid that she would have an accident in the underground fighting tournament. He hadn't found the answer from Han Qingwu yet, so he absolutely didn't want her to die in the underground fighting tournament. Unexpectedly, he followed Li Laozhan's bet and won a lot of money. Let's go. Tan Xiu got up with a faint smile, and was pulled away from his seat by Li Laozhan. Ji Mu, on the other hand, also looked happy as he followed him to the backstage. Although he didn't bet much, the odds were high enough. Half an hour later, Tan Xiu, Li Laozhan, Ji Mu, and Chu Xueqing had already taken the elevator to the surface. It didn't take long for Han Qingwu to change her clothes and come before everyone. Are you happy? Asked Tan Xiu while looking at Han Qingwu. Han Qingwu nodded and said with a smile, I won some money, so of course I'm happy. It's just that I'm not happy. I'm actually looking forward to fighting Ladyboy Wu Tong. If you want to fight, I'll send you to Jingmen Island later, said Tan Xiu with a smile. The smile on Han Qingwu's face froze. She immediately shook her head and let out a hollow laugh. Forget it. You also bet? Asked Tan Xiu with a smile. How much did you win? I bet 20 million and won more than 100 million, said Han Qingwu. I'll be a rich woman in the future. Your family isn't short of money, is it? Tan Xiu snappily said. You don't want money from your family, do you? Do you really want to be self-reliant? Han Qingwu knew that Tan Xiu knew her grandfather, so he should also know about her family's situation. She nodded and said with a smile, I usually spend very little, so I spend what I earn. It's good. Tan Xiu smiled and no longer entangled with this issue. Instead, he pointed to Li Laozhan and Chu Xueqing and introduced them to Han Qingwu. Li Laozhan was a forthright person. He had won 600 to 700 million yuan because of Han Qingwu, so he patted his chest and said, Miss Han, I really have to thank you this time. 600 to 700 million. I'm afraid that I won't be able to earn that much in a year or two with my business. I'll treat you to supper tonight, and I'll give you a big gift when I go to Magic City some other day as a token of my gratitude. No need for a big gift, old brotherly, said Han Qingwu with a smile. This is what you deserve. When it's time for supper, we'll just have to choose a good place. Li Laozhan said in a straightforward manner. Supper must be treated and a big gift must be given. Ah, that's right, Brother Ji. You're the local tyrant of Changxi City, so you should know where the best supper is, right? I'm in a good mood today, so take us to the best place. Brother Ji? Jimu shuddered inwardly. When he watched the game tonight, he secretly searched for information about Li Laozhan on the internet. What shocked him was that Li Laozhan was the Steel King of the North, and his net worth was definitely more than 10 billion yuan. Although he was a descendant of the Ji family, he didn't have the qualifications to be called brother by Li Laozhan. If it was his father, it might be more like it. He was basking in the light. Ji Mu secretly glanced at Tan Xiu and found that he nodded to him. He immediately let out a hollow laugh and said, I also won a lot tonight. Old brother Li, you're the guest, so I'll treat you to dinner. Another day, when old brother Li is free, I'll treat you again. This night. It was a fruitful night, but also a pleasant night. It was already 1:30 p.m. when the five of them finished their supper. Since he drank a lot, Tan Xiu, who didn't deliberately force the alcohol out of his body, was also a bit tipsy. As for Li Laozhan and Chu Xueqing, both of them drank a lot. When they left, Jimu called the Ji family's people to send them to the hotel they had booked in advance. However, before parting, Li Laozhan pulled Tan Xiu and told him that they would meet again tomorrow, and then go to Magic City together. As for what it was, Tan Xiu didn't ask, and neither did Li Laozhan. Chapter 709. The next day, when the red sun rose from the east, Tan Xiu got up from the hotel bed in a daze. He was staying in Jimu's luxurious villa in Changshi City. He even changed the bedding in the master bedroom and gave it to Tan Xiu. As for him, he spent the night in a guest room on the first floor. Knock, knock, the bedroom door was knocked. As Tan Xiu opened the door, he saw Han Qinggu standing outside with a smile and her handbag in her hand. "You got up so early?" asked Tan Xiu with a smile. Han Qinggu followed Tan Xiu into the bedroom and smilingly said, "It's getting late. I heard some movements in your room, so I came over to ask. Are we going back to Shanghai directly? Or staying in Changshi City to play? I got a call from Yu Hong this morning, and she complained about me." Tan Xiu thought for a while and asked, "Do you have something urgent? If there's nothing urgent, I can have some fun in Changshi City. I'm fine with anything." "Then let's stay here," Han Qinggu immediately said. "We'll go back in the afternoon or evening." "All right," Tan Xiu casually replied. He had promised Li Laozhan last night that he would go back to Shanghai with him, so he planned to contact him later. However, Han Qingwu's next words made Tan Xiu give up the idea of contacting Li Laozhan later. "Tan Xiu, let's have breakfast first. How about you accompany me to Yendang Ancient Town? I heard that the scenery there is very good, and I've always wanted to see it. But I've been too busy, so I haven't been able to go there until now. By the way, call Yu Hong and we'll have lunch there." Tan Xiu thought for a while and said, "I'm afraid I'll have something very important to deal with later. You must approve my leave at that time." Upon hearing this, Han Qinggu immediately rolled her eyes at Tan Xiu. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry and said, "You actually want to bargain with me? Forget it, forget it. Who asked me to be in a good mood these 2 days? I promise you." Tan Xiu was speechless. However, he did have a lot of things to do in the near future. On one hand, he had to think about how to make more money. On the other hand, he also had to hold the bidding for the magnificent Tang Corporation's project in Shanghai. Moreover, he didn't go to Jingmen Island to see Gu Yan'er during the new year, so he planned to go there in the near future. If he had enough time, he would also go to Nine Dragons Island. After washing up, Tan Xiu came to the first floor with Han Qinggu and saw Ji Mu, who was wearing an apron, coming out of the kitchen with 2 dishes. "Bro Tang, Miss Han, you're up. Hurry up and eat breakfast. I'm the one who cooked today. You must do me the honor and eat more," Ji Mu said with a chuckle. "You also know how to cook?" Tan Xiu asked with a strange expression. Ji Mu puffed out his chest and proudly said, "That's natural. Back then, in order to pick up girls in order to fall in love, I spent a lot of effort on cooking. I believe in the saying that if you want to capture a person's heart, you must first capture her stomach." Hehe. Han Qinggu couldn't help but burst into laughter, while Tan Xiu also burst out laughing. Who could have imagined that the dignified young master of the Ji family in Changshi City, Ji Mu, would actually learn cooking just to pick up girls? For dishes and a soup, meat and vegetable matching, Ji Mu was very thoughtful. He even put fruits and desserts on the table. It was as though he was afraid that Tan Xiu and Han Qinggu wouldn't be used to his cooking, so he also put hot milk and bread on the side. "It's really delicious." Han Qinggu was not a foodie, but she still ate with relish. After eating a few mouthfuls, Tan Xiu praised, "It seems your wife will be blessed in the future." "It's good that you like it," said Ji Mu with an embarrassed smile. "That's right. Do you have any plans for today?" "I'm going to accompany Han Qinggu to stroll around," said Tan Xiu. "We should return to Shanghai in the afternoon. Li Laozhan also told me yesterday that we're going to Shanghai together today." Ji Mu glanced at Han Qinggu and found that she was eating with her head lowered. Then he said with a smile, "Since Brother Tang is accompanying Miss Han to go shopping, then I won't be the third wheel. If you're going to stay in Changshi for a few more days, call me at night, Brother Tang. If you don't want to stay, Then I won't send you off. I'll visit you again when I have time later. Don't be so polite with me later. Tan Xiu waved and said, let's drink together if we have time. All right. Jimu was immediately overjoyed after hearing it. He felt that his actions from yesterday to today were really worth it. At Yending Ancient Town, Tan Xiu accompanied Han Qinggu to play for most of the morning until noon. Only then did they find a restaurant and waited for Yu Hong to come over. After receiving her complaints, they had lunch together. Originally, Yu Hong proposed to go boating together in the afternoon, but Tan Xiu received a phone call and immediately gave up the plan. Are you sure? Tan Xiu's eyes flickered while holding his mobile phone. Mouse's voice came from the phone again. Boss, there's absolutely no mistake. I spent a lot of money to buy this information from a senior executive of the Mind Assembly Tech. Do you know how much money I spent to get this information? 6 million. That greedy bastard actually asked for 6 million from me. Let alone 6 million, even 60 million is worth it, said Tan Xiu in a deep voice. I'll immediately send someone to contact you. You're in charge of commanding them, and keep an eye on Xie Jiqiang. Call me immediately if he comes in contact with the Sui people again. You're not coming in person, boss? Asked Mouse. That's a big deal. I'm in Changxi now, said Tan Xiu. It'll take me 1 or 2 hours to get back. Tell me the address first. I'll go find you when I get there. All right, he hung up the phone. Looking at the excited Han Qingwu, Tan Xiu said, I have an urgent matter to take care of and have to rush back to Shanghai. I'm afraid I can't accompany you to go boating. Han Qingwu, will you go back with me? Or will you go back by yourself later? Since you're going back, then I'll go back too, said Han Qingwu without hesitation. Tan Xiu, what's the important matter that requires you to go back so urgently? Yu Hong said with dissatisfaction. Qingwu, it's not easy for her to come to Changxi, and I've already asked for a leave. How can I accompany her? Qingwu, if Tan Xiu has something to do, just let him go back first. Don't tell me you think I can't accompany her? This, Han Qingwu was a bit hesitant. That's right. Since Yu Hong has said so, then stay and have fun first. Tan Xiu said. Relax and have a good life later. Han Qingwu hesitated for a moment before nodding in agreement. After all, her good sister had specially asked for a leave to accompany her. If she were to leave, it would hurt her good sister's heart. 4 p.m. Tan Xiu, Li Laozhan, and Chu Xueqing had already arrived in Shanghai. On the way, Tan Xiu figured out the purpose of their visit to Shanghai. It was to discuss business. Since Tan Xiu had an important matter to deal with, he agreed to meet with the two in 2 days, and then hurried to the address Rat told him. Jingning District. Kunugsha Pharmaceutical Company. The geographical environment here was good, and the area it occupied was not small. Only after Tang Xiu learned that the company in front of him was a subsidiary of the Mind Assembly Biotechnology. It was also the place where the pharmaceutical factory was located. Even the land was bought by Xie Jiqiang. How is it? Is Xie Jiqiang inside? Tan Xiu asked directly after seeing the thievish-looking Rat. Rat politely handed over a cigarette and personally lit it for Tan Xiu. Then he said, he has been in there for more than 4 hours and hasn't come out. The entire Kunugsha pharmaceutical factory is being watched by our people. He is definitely still inside. The intelligence bought with a lot of money shows that his secret laboratory is here. Tan Xiu asked, what about the people from SOE? Are there any unusual movements? Yes, said Rat. In the past 4 hours, a total of 2 groups of people have come here. One of them is from SOE, and the other group is made up of 4 or 5 people. Their identities are very mysterious. I have already sent people to investigate them, but there is no news yet. Tan Xiu frowned and said, you mean that the other group of people is not from SOE? It shouldn't be, said Rat. I have investigated the number of people from SOE who have sneaked into Shanghai this time. It shouldn't be their people. I think that the other group of people is also after the gene particle. Since I can bribe the higher-ups of the Mind Assembly Biotechnology, I'm afraid that there are also other forces eyeing the company and investigating the existence of the gene particle. What you said makes sense. Tan Xiu nodded and said, Let's not act rashly for now. Let's not act rashly for now. Let's see how the other forces react first. By the way, the people from SWE and the other group of forces haven't found our people yet, have they? I've arranged it very secretly, said Rat with a smile. They absolutely can't find us. Tan Xiao nodded and said, continue to keep an eye on them. Whether it's the SOE, Xie Jiqiang, or the other group of forces, keep an eye on them. The gene particle is extraordinary. Regardless of which force gets it, they will probably be able to train a large number of experts in a very short time. Also, if the gene particle spreads out on a large scale, it will definitely affect the world's development. I don't want to see such a situation. Rat understood Tan Xiao's meaning. He was also aware of the power of the gene particle. According to the bragging of the Mind Assembly Biotechnology's higher-ups, obtaining the gene particle was tantamount to obtaining a large number of armed forces. Having armed forces was tantamount to controlling more power and obtaining more wealth. By the way, we haven't found anyone from the military. They seem to have disappeared mysteriously. Tan Xiao stared blankly and frowned. Could it be that the other group of people who came here in the afternoon were from the military? Unlikely. Rat shook his head. Investigate them. Investigate anyone who has the power to pry into the gene particle, even if they are from the military, said Tan Xiao. Understood. Rat nodded heavily. Tan Xiao didn't stay here. After getting on the car, he looked at Mo Ao, who was sitting in the front passenger seat, and directly ordered, send someone to get 2 sets of night walking clothes. We're going to do some activities tonight. I'm really sorry. There was a last-minute training session yesterday, so the update couldn't be completed. Quiet Night will try to complete the update before the end of the month. We'll update as usual today. Chapter 710. The moonlight shone like water, sending a chill down one's spine. Jingming District. Outside the outermost high wall of the Kunugsha Pharmaceutical Company, 2 ghostly figures silently approached and easily climbed a bare tree outside the courtyard wall. It was as though 2 gusts of black wind leaped from the high branches into the iron barrels stacked inside the wall. Put this on. In a hidden corner, Tan Xiao took out an invisibility charm and handed it to Mo Ao, who was also wearing a black suit. Mo Ao didn't ask Tan Xiao what it was. He directly wore it on his neck and whispered, Boss, this Kunugsha Pharmaceutical Company doesn't seem to have many security guards on the surface, but there are a lot of people hiding in the dark. The most important thing is that there should be surveillance equipment everywhere. We'll be discovered unless we sprint at full speed. Tan Xiao smiled indifferently and patted his shoulder. He then lowered his voice and said, Remember, no matter what happens, don't speak or make any noise. After saying that, under Mo Ao's watchful eyes, he directly walked out from the iron barrels. Even if there were 4 security guards lined up in the distance with flashlights, he didn't avoid them in the slightest. Mo Ao was confused. He didn't understand why the boss exposed his whereabouts. However, he still grabbed a sharp dagger in a flash and flashed to Tan Xiao's side. Once those 4 security guards pounced on them, he would kill them with lightning speed. However, the next scene made him dumbfounded. The 4 security guards lined up and patrolled around as though they didn't see Tan Xiao and him at all. They shone their flashlights and looked around, brushing past the 2 of them. Mo Ao hadn't recovered from his shock until the 4 security guards disappeared at the corner in the distance. A smile outlined on the corner of Tan Xiao's mouth. He gently patted Mo Ao's shoulder, and then strode inside. After walking for dozens of meters, he found more than a dozen surveillance cameras. He then took Mo Ao and swaggered past the surveillance cameras. What the hell? Mo Ao swallowed his saliva and followed behind Tan Xiao. After passing by the other 4 security guards, he subconsciously raised his hand and touched the invisibility charm hanging on his chest. Although he was a Taoist cultivator with a body full of strength, he didn't know any magic, and he didn't understand the magical effects of talismans. He wanted to ask, but when he recalled Tan Xiao's words, he could only suppress the confusion in his heart. Kunugsha Pharmaceutical Company covered a large area, and there were many buildings inside. There were even a few rows of factories at the back. What made Tan Xiao and Mo Ao speechless was that they had only entered the front yard, and as they continued to walk deeper, they found many sentry posts. Over the past 2 days, while the patrols were in and out, they successfully sneaked past 3 sentry posts and stopped in front of the 4th one. What should we do? Mo followed Tan Xiao to a remote corner and asked in a voice that only the two of them could hear. In front of the 4th sentry post, there were 6 security guards standing, and there were no security guards coming in or out at all. What made Tan Xiao and Mo speechless the most was that once they crossed the 4th sentry post, there was a steel cast corridor inside, and the entire corridor led directly to the door of a 5-story building. The windows of the entire building were all sealed with anti-theft windows. Tan Xiao had been releasing his spiritual consciousness, covering a radius of 200 or 300 meters. In the face of Mo's inquiry, even if he could fly and had the invisibility charm, he still couldn't do anything. I can't get in. Tan Xiao shook his head. In the observation of his spiritual consciousness, there were no other people in the entire 5-story building except for the 18 security guards who were sleeping and did not even take off their clothes. According to the intelligence, Xie Jiqiang had come here at noon yesterday and had not left at all, but now he couldn't find his shadow. Tan Xiao guessed that there should be an underground laboratory, but he couldn't even get inside, let alone the underground laboratory. At this time he didn't want to beat the grass and alert the snake, because he didn't know whether this was a smoke bomb thrown by Xie Jiqiang or not. Gene particles. This was very important to Tan Xiao. He didn't want to see the world's structure change, and he didn't want to see the emergence of countless genetically modified humans in the world. If the gene particles had side effects, he was afraid that it would harm a lot of people. Let's go. We'll think of another way. Tan Xiao sighed in his heart, reached out to grab Mo's shoulder, and his figure instantly soared into the sky. In just a few breaths, he had already flown out of Wuxia Pharmaceuticals. In less than 2 minutes, 15 ghostly figures rushed out from the 4th sentry post. They were wearing pitch-black steel armor, holding knives, swords, sticks, axes, and other cold weapons of various shapes. Boss, there's no one. One of the middle-aged men in armor, after searching around for a while, raised his wrist and reported to the walkie-talkie. Tens of meters underground, Xie Jiqiang sat in front of the monitor, his eyes flashing with coldness. The heat detector would never make a mistake. Previously, his subordinate reported that it detected 2 humanoid energy furnaces, which meant that someone had already sneaked in. Find them even if you have to dig 3 feet underground, find them for me, said Xie Jiqiang in a deep voice. In a residential building a few kilometers away from Wuxia Pharmaceuticals, Tan Xiao and Mo appeared. As the two entered the house, the monkey-faced mouse greeted them with bloodshot eyes. Boss, you personally went into action? Yes, I personally went into action, but there was no harvest, said Tan Xiao. The entire Wuxia Pharmaceuticals is under Xie Jiqiang's management, so there's no way to enter it. I've read all the information you got, and we couldn't even enter the infrared mechanism inside. I didn't collect much information about Xie Jiqiang, said Mouse helplessly. But from the information I got, I can tell that he's very cautious and never leaves any traces behind. What's more, the 4 years of his life experience in his profile were all fake. I can't find anything, so he should not have been in the country during those 4 years. Since we can't find anything now, then there's no need to investigate him anymore. Tan Xiao nodded. Remember, what I want is the gene particle. This thing is too terrifying, so we must get it in the end. Inform your men to withdraw the monitoring point by 2 kilometers. Remember, the intelligence personnel must not be exposed. Rest assured, boss. I'll definitely arrange it. Mouse cautiously nodded. Tan Xiao didn't speak anymore. He quickly changed his clothes and left with Mo. He didn't go to the Paradise Manor this time, but directly returned to the Blue Star Villa complex. The next morning, Tan Xiao left home in high spirits and walked to the University of Science and Technology. Due to the recent delays, he had hardly studied. Therefore, he didn't plan to busy himself with other things before the bidding for the project. He wanted to calm down and learn more things. In the library, Tan Xiao quietly flipped through the books on finance and economics. Although the morning class had already ended, he always felt that he seemed to have forgotten something. Buzz, buzz. His mobile phone, which was set to vibrate, suddenly vibrated. Tan Xiu grabbed the phone and looked at the caller ID. He suddenly remembered that he had forgotten something. He received a text message this morning. Yuan Chuling wanted to come to the University of Science and Technology to find him, saying that he had something to discuss with him. And this phone call was from Yuan Chuling. Tan Xiu didn't answer the phone. After hanging up, he sent a text message to Yuan Chuling, telling him to wait for him at the entrance of the University of Science and Technology. Then he put away his books and took the books he had selected before to the registration office. After going through the borrowing procedures, he went straight to the entrance of the University of Science and Technology. Oh, Fatty Yuan, you're doing quite well, aren't you? Nice cars and beautiful women. You're so romantic and unrestrained. As soon as Tan Xiu came out, he saw Yuan Chuling hugging a graceful and beautiful girl next to a white Porsche Cayenne. He immediately walked over and teased him. Upon seeing Tan Xiu, Yuan Chuling pushed the girl in his arms away and said with a smile, "Big bro, I'm just taking advantage of you. If you didn't invest in me, how could I have the capital to be so free and unrestrained? This is Little Ting, my girlfriend. Little Ting, this is the big bro I often tell you about, Tan Xiu." "Nice to meet you, Tan Xiu," said Wei shouting with a natural and graceful nod. Tan Xiu nodded and immediately looked at Yuan Chuling and asked, "What's the matter? Why are you looking for me so urgently? I'm a good student here, so don't disturb my studies." Yuan Chuling rolled his eyes and snappily said, "If you're a good student, then there are no bad students in this world. I just heard a few days ago that the dignified big boss of the magnificent Tang Corporation has been studying at the University of Science and Technology for more than half a year. Yet the number of times he has attended classes in the classroom is pitiful." Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and asked, "Have you contacted Han Qinggu?" "Hee, you're indeed worthy of being Big Bro Tang," said Yuan Chuling with a grin. "But she has a deep grudge against you, saying that you're too busy and don't have time to pamper her." "Fuck off," Tan Xiu smilingly scolded. "What exactly are you looking for me for? Spit it out if you have something to say. I still have to go back to the library to read books." Yuan Chuling rubbed his hands and grinned. "I need money." "What money?" Tan Xiu stared blankly and asked with a confused expression. "Our fitness center's business is booming and we made a lot of money after the new year," said Yuan Chuling. "But I'm not going to give you any dividends for the time being. I'm thinking of opening another branch, and I've checked the address. However, the investment for opening a branch is a bit big. I asked my dad for 10 million yuan, but the total amount is only 16 million yuan, which is not enough." "You don't have enough money, so why are you in such a hurry to open a branch?" Tan Xiu asked with a helpless expression. "I have no choice. I want to develop the fitness center as a business," said Yuan Chuling. "Besides, the location I chose this time is really good. After some research, I found that there are 2 new residential areas nearby, both of which are high-rise residential areas. The high flow of people is one thing, but the rent is also cheap. The boss has run into some bad luck, so he's anxious to rent out the store in his hands." "How much more money do you need?" asked Tan Xiu. 3 million, said Yuan Chuling. "If you have too much money to burn, you can give me 2 million more." Chapter 7:11. It's good to be motivated, but you also need to act within your capabilities. This was Tan Xiu's point of view. If it were an ordinary friend who asked for 3 or 5 million yuan, he would never have bothered to pay attention to it. But Yuan Chuling was not his ordinary friend. He was his best friend who could fight for him, proposed to expel him from school, and finally followed him to transfer classes. Tan Xiu took out a cigarette and took the time to light it and smoke. He then transferred 5 million yuan to Yuan Chuling's account through his mobile phone. Then he calmly said, "Just give me a call for such a trivial matter later. You don't have to come all the way here." Yuan Chuling was a bit touched inside, but he didn't show it on the surface. With a smile on his chubby face, he said to his girlfriend, Wei, shouting, "See? This big bro of mine is so bright that I'm speechless. Big bro will protect you in the future. You'll definitely have a good life if you follow me." "You're dead." Wei, shouting, coquettishly rolled her eyes at Fatty. She then shifted to Tang Xiu and said, "This Fatty is really lucky to have a boss like you. I always heard him say how good you are to him before. And now I've seen it with my own eyes. I'll call you big bro like Fatty in the future. You don't mind, do you? It's fine. Tanxio waved his hand and smilingly said. Well, have you had lunch, big bro? Wei Xiaoting laughed. Shall we find a place to have lunch together? Tanxio didn't refuse. He didn't have much ability to recognize people when he was in the immortal world. But after returning to Earth, he had been very diligent in this aspect, and had made great progress. Even though it was his first time interacting with Wei Xiaoting, he could sense that Wei Xiaoting wasn't with him because Yuan Chuling was rich. Her attitude and even her eyes showed that she really liked Yuan Chuling. In the evening, Tanxio received a call from Moe and came to Paradise Manor. Although Moe didn't say anything specific over the phone, Tanxio felt that it should be something good from his trembling voice that was tinged with surprise. To his surprise, just as he arrived at the innermost Western-style building in Paradise Manor, he found Han Jintong, Shan Zhena, Ouyang Lulu, and Han Qinggu were also there besides Moe. Professor Mo, why did you call me over so urgently? Inkblot held the glass bottle tightly in his hand. The glass bottle was half filled with dark red blood. Upon hearing Tanxio's inquiry, he hurriedly replied with an excited expression. There's a special active energy in Shanjena's blood, boss. I've studied it and found that this active energy can slow down the cell division in the human body and secrete more red blood cells. At the same time, I discovered that it contains another terrifying virus element. This virus element is extremely harmful to living beings, but if it is integrated into the bloodstream, it will evolve into active energy. Tanxio interrupted him and said, Professor Mo, you don't have to explain in such detail. I just want to hear the most important conclusion. Active energy can slow down the metabolism of living beings, and can supplement the internal energy consumption of living beings, said Moe. The simplest way to put it is that if there's this active energy in the human body, it can prolong one's life. Tanxio was silent for a moment and then slowly asked, Can the human body accommodate this active energy? Ugh. Moe's expression froze and he was rendered speechless. He only studied the substance contained in the bloodkin's blood, but he didn't conduct any experiments at all. The possibility he mentioned was a complete speculation. According to Moe's past character and rigorous attitude toward science, such a situation would never occur. However, the result of the bloodkin's blood research made him extremely excited. After all, if the active energy he studied was really as he speculated, and it could greatly increase the lifespan of humans, it would mean that he had achieved great success in the field of scientific research. Even if this result were to be promoted to the entire human race, he would rewrite history and become the greatest scientist in the history of mankind. Looking at the frozen expression on Moe's face, Tanxio lightly said, Professor Mo, your current research results are just like Tang Xuanzang and his disciples' journey to the West on a pilgrimage for Buddhist scriptures. They've only taken the first step, yet they couldn't even rescue Monkey Sun who was crushed under the Five Fingers Mountain. Don't deny it, the active energy you just mentioned hasn't been tested on the human body yet. Furthermore, even if it has been tested, it's still unknown whether this active energy can survive in the human body. Even if it can survive, will there be any sequelae? Even if there are no sequelae and it's completely beneficial to mankind, there's no way to promote it to the entire human race. Even this research can't be exposed to outsiders. Moe was ashamed by Tanxio's words, but Tanxio's last sentence still made him a bit unconvinced, so he asked, Why can't it? You're a researcher, so you probably haven't thought about the consequences. Tanxio sighed. The active energy exists in the blood of the bloodkin. How many bloodkin are there in this world? How many bloodkin's blood can be provided to increase the lifespan of humans? Furthermore, if the amount of the active energy extracted is too little, and it's known by those powerful people in the world, do you think it will cause turmoil? Can we be safe and sound? An ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. You should understand this truth. Moe was stunned. Tanxio's words were like a blow to his head, making him sober up in a flash. Quantity. An ordinary man is innocent, but treasuring a jade ring becomes a crime. Merely these two factors caused the trace of dissatisfaction in the bottom of his heart to vanish into thin air. Humans have endless desires, and greed is the most terrifying desire. Since ancient times, there have been human sovereigns who committed all kinds of atrocious crimes for the sake of immortality, for the sake of longevity, for the sake of prolonging life. What kind of disaster would the modern people do at all costs? And wouldn't the disaster fall on him and Tan Xiao? Cold sweat dripped from Mo's forehead. An apologetic look appeared on his old face as he nodded and said, "I understand, boss." Tan Xiao sighed and faintly said, "Your responsibility is research, Professor Mo. I also hope that your research can achieve great results. But we don't have the ability to suppress the entire human race, so we can only secretly use the results on our own people. Whether we can prolong our lifespan and live a few more years, it's all up to you." "Our own people? Including me?" Mo's eyes lit up. He nodded with a serious expression and said, "Rest assured, boss. I'll do my best." Tan Xiao patted his shoulder, and then looked at Shanjena with a faint smile. "Stay for a while. Cooperate with Professor Mo's research. I'll give you a big gift when his research results are out. Even if you can't become a prince in the future, being an earl or marquis is also good." "I'll definitely fully cooperate with you." Shanjena was ecstatic. Tan Xiao nodded with satisfaction. Then he suddenly looked at Han Jintong and said, "Actually, even if I don't give you a cultivation technique, I'm afraid your granddaughter will get one for you in the future given her ability. However, given your current age and the cultivation conditions on Earth, it will be very difficult for you to have any great achievements even if you risk your life. I think you should relax your mind and enjoy your old age." Han Jintong revealed a bitter expression and said, "Even if I don't have any great achievements, it's still better than doing nothing all day long. Moreover, even a single level of advancement would increase my lifespan by a little. Living longer is always a good thing after all." "I understand." Tan Xiao nodded. Shortly after, Tan Xiao left the Western-style house and greeted Ouyang Lulu. Just after he left the Paradise Manor, he received a call from Han Qinggu. After waiting outside for a few minutes, Han Qinggu drove her car and caught up with him. "Is there something?" Sitting in the driver's seat, Tan Xiao opened the front seat's window and asked. Han Qinggu also didn't get off. She hesitated for a moment and asked, "Will you go to school tomorrow?" "I should go to school tomorrow if there are no unexpected situations," said Tan Xiao. "But why don't you stay in Changxi City for a few more days?" "Yu Hong has to work, so she doesn't have much time," said Han Qinggu with a smile. "All right, I just wanted to ask you if you'll go to school tomorrow. There's nothing else, so I'll take my leave first." "All right." Tan Xiao closed the window and couldn't help but shake his head. A woman's heart was like a needle at the bottom of the ocean. He really couldn't fathom it. If it was just to ask if he would go to school tomorrow, she could have just asked on the phone. Why did she make him wait for a few minutes and waste his time? The next 2 days were calm and tranquil. Tan Xiao didn't care about Xia Jiqiang and Esui's matters in these 2 days, nor did he ask about Mo's research. Instead, he went to the classroom, the cafeteria, the library, and then returned to Blue Star Villa complex to rest. Early in the morning, the first ray of sunlight passed through the gap of the curtains and shone into the bedroom. Tan Xiao was awakened by the melodious ringtone of his mobile phone. He picked up the phone and chatted with Kong Xia for a while, learning that she would personally rush to Shanghai 3 days later to preside over the project bidding meeting. The project bidding was imminent, and all the procedures for the purchase of the land had been completed, and all the documents had been approved. They only needed to finalize the final construction company before the project could start. The design drawing. It was drawn by Tan Xiao himself, but it was only a rough outline of the overall framework. He didn't draw the specific architectural distribution, the subdivision of the building, the house type, the specifications, and so on. Naturally, he needed the construction company to modify and design it according to his design drawing. Tan Xiao's drawing ability was very strong, and he also had countless buildings in the Immortal world as his reference. But this time, he was going to build the magnificent Tang Corporation's HQ and industrial park, so he didn't know much about the design and considerations of modern architecture. Knock knock. The door was knocked and the voice of the housekeeper, Zhang Xinlan, came from the outside. Mr. Tang, there's a guest waiting for you in the living room downstairs. Tan Xiu opened the door and looked at Zhang Xinlan outside asking, "Who's looking for me?" "Your big sister, Miss Chen," said Zhang Xinlan with a smile. "Big sister? Chen Xiaowan?" Tan Xiu's expression moved, and he immediately walked out of the door. There will be a lot of meetings in the next few days, so the second chapter may be delayed a bit. Please understand, brothers and sisters. Chapter 712. Chen Xiaowan had been very busy recently. She stayed up all night every day and was exhausted. Finally, after completing an unprecedentedly large project, he could finally relax. Despite being young and energetic, she still stayed in her residence and rested for 2 or 3 days before she could be considered to have fully recovered. She had only a few friends in Shanghai, and colleagues with whom she shared a common language were even rarer. After being fully recovered, she still had 3 or 4 days of vacation left. Taking advantage of the fact that it happened to be Sunday, she excitedly ran to the Blue Star Villa complex, looking for Tan Xiu to go out for a stroll. "How come you're free today, sis?" asked Tan Xiu with a smile as he walked down the stairs and came to the living room. Chen Xiaowan got up and smilingly said, "I just got some free time, so I ran over to look for you. Do you have anything to do today? Do you want to go shopping with me?" Tan Xiu gave it a thought and found that he really had nothing to do today, so he happily agreed. He had a special feeling for Chen Xiaowan, an older sister who was several years older than him, and he cherished her very much. After having breakfast at home, the duo drove the cheapest car in the garage in a low-key manner, and went to the bustling streets of Shanghai. They went shopping, had a meal, and even went to watch a movie in the afternoon. It wasn't until the evening that the duo casually found a restaurant. "There's something wrong with your leg, sis." After ordering the dishes and handing over the menu to the waiter, Tan Xiu looked at the somewhat tired Chen Xiaowan and said. Chen Xiaowan stared blankly for a moment, before a dejected look flashed on her face. She then forced a smile and said, "It's nothing. Maybe I'm a bit tired after walking all day." "You wouldn't be in such a state if you were tired." Tan Xiu shook his head. "Sis, there's no need to hide anything between us. Tell me what happened." Chen Xiaowan hesitated for a moment before she forced a smile and said, "You're talking about my left leg, right? As a matter of fact, I went to see a client last week. That client turned out to be a pervert, and he couldn't take advantage of me, so he hit me with an ashtray. It hurt a bit at first, but it's been a week. It won't hurt too much if I don't walk for a long time." "A client? What client?" asked Tan Xiu with a frown. "It's just an ordinary client." Chen Xiaowan waved her hand and said, "The business has gone sour, and I don't want to talk about that person anymore. Brother, I've always had a question. Can I ask you?" Seeing that Chen Xiaowan didn't want to say anything, Tan Xiu had no choice but to suppress this doubt in his heart and said, "If you have any questions, just ask. I'll definitely tell you everything I know." "Brother, I really don't understand. How did our company's big boss become your subordinate?" asked Chen Xiaowan. "Her respect for you seems to exceed the boundaries of a subordinate to a leader. Could it be that you fed her some kind of magic potion? Or do you have something on her?" Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, "Your little brother has a strong charisma, so those subordinates will naturally listen to me. Kawako naturally attached great importance to my words since she could get some benefits from me. No matter what, I, your brother, am now a nouveau riche who can earn hundreds of thousands of yuan every minute." Puffed. Chen Xiaowan couldn't help laughing and gave Tan Xiu a flirtatious supercilious look. Suddenly, a brilliant light flashed in her eyes, and she asked with some anticipation, "Why don't you go somewhere with me tonight?" "What place?" Tan Xiu didn't expect that Chen Xiaowan would suddenly have such a whim, and even look of expectation, so he immediately asked. "As a matter of fact, it's our university classmates gathering tonight," said Chen Xiaowan. "But with you accompanying me, I want to go instead." Tan Xiu was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. "What's the matter with me going to your university classmates gathering? I don't know anyone." Chen Xiaowan gave it a thought, and felt that Tan Xiu's words made sense. Her eyes immediately turned dark, and she said with a helpless expression, "Let's not go since you don't want to. But what are we going to do after dinner? I'll take you to a good place, Tan Xiao said with a smile. You can go there to have fun when you have nothing to do later. Where? The Paradise Manor. 2 hours later, Tan Xiao and Chen Xiaowan arrived at the Paradise Manor. Chen Xiaowan's expression turned strange as they entered the front gate. She couldn't help but pull Tan Xiao's sleeve and whispered, "Brother, since we're already here, why don't you go sit with that group of classmates?" Classmates? Tan Xiao stared blankly and asked with a surprised expression, "Is this the place for your class reunion?" "Yes, it is." Chen Xiaowan nodded. "There are a few local tycoons in our class who have been doing very well after graduation. This college reunion is also arranged by them." Tan Xiao thought for a while and then nodded. "All right. Tell me the specific address first. I'll go find the boss here and get 2 bottles of good wine. I'll look for you later." "You know the boss here?" Chen Xiaowan was surprised. "I know him. I'm quite familiar with him," said Tan Xiao with a smile. A few minutes later, Tan Xiao appeared in Ouyang Lulu's office. To his surprise, he found that Ouyang Lulu's outfit today was different from her usual style. She had changed into a professional outfit for a white-collar worker. She wore glasses and permed her blonde hair as she sat on the boss's chair, reading a book. "Your style is really interesting." Tan Xiao let out a faint smile and came to Ouyang Lulu's front. His eyes casually swept over the book in her hand, and his expression suddenly froze. Cherry Kamurocho manga. Ouyang Lulu put down the book and happily walked out of her desk. She cheerfully turned around in front of Tan Xiao and smilingly said, "How is it? My outfit is good, right?" "Yeah." Tan Xiao forced a smile and said, "It's just that your outfit doesn't seem to match the book you're reading. Anyways, let's not talk about this. Sis Xiaowan has come to the Paradise Manor, and her college classmates happen to be having a reunion here. I'll take 2 bottles of good wine and go there. You should have some God's nectar here, right?" Upon hearing Tan Xiao's question, Ouyang Lulu was a bit annoyed and immediately said, "I do have some, but that surnamed Kong is too stingy. There are less than 100 boxes of God's nectar left in stock now. A few days ago, my subordinates complained to me that it won't take long for the rest of the God's nectar to be sold out." Tan Xiao snappily glared at her. Was 100 boxes less? He was the one who set the rules. Let alone 100 boxes, even if there were 8 or 10 boxes, he wouldn't be able to buy it if he didn't buy it through the magnificent Tang Corporation's exclusive stores in major cities. All right, don't be ungrateful of your blessings. The magnificent Tang Corporation has its own rules and regulations. You are already an exception. Kong Xia will come to Shanghai in a few days. If you want more God's nectar, you can pester her when the time comes. Whether you can get it from her or not will depend on your ability. No problem. Ouyang Lulu immediately nodded. Paradise Manor. On top of a 3-story Western-style building, Shimei Wutong was holding a pair of binoculars and observing the situation inside a building in the distance. He could clearly see the figures of Tan Xiao and Ouyang Lulu through the building's window. Who the hell is this guy? He has a very close relationship with Ice Phoenix, but he also has a lot of relationships with other women. Isn't he afraid that Ice Phoenix will get jealous and cut him alive? Wu Tong had been secretly following Han Qinggu for several days. To his surprise, Han Qinggu was like a little girl in love. Through his observation, he found that the person Han Qinggu liked was Tan Xiao, a student of Shanghai University, but a guy with a very eccentric behavior. Your luck in love is not shallow. Wu Tong let out a strange laugh, but he didn't have the slightest envy. He liked men, but he had a good feeling toward Tan Xiao. He even fantasized about whether he could pamper Tan Xiao, who he found interesting. Who is it? Suddenly, Shimei Wutong's complexion crazily changed. He instantly turned around with a dagger in his hand and looked at the middle-aged man who was only 7 or 8 meters away from him, looking at him with a cold and detached expression. You should be familiar with me, said Mo Ao indifferently. Wu Tong squinted his eyes, but a tempestuous shock surged inside his heart. He was perfectly aware of his own strength, as well as his own vigilance. The other party was able to lurk 7 or 8 meters away from him without him being aware of it. His skill was absolutely terrifying. It's you, his bodyguard? Wu Tong stretched his arm and pointed to the window in the distance. Since you know about it, you should also know that you've been exposed, right? Tell me, why are you following and monitoring my boss? Wu Tong snorted coldly and said, I like him. What's it to you? Having said that, he immediately turned around, and his figure instantly jumped down from the top of the building. He easily jumped down from the 3-story height and stood on the ground. He looked up at Mo, who had chased him to the edge of the roof and poked his head out. Wu Tong raised his middle finger at Mo. Then he turned around and was about to leave. Do you think we're a place where you can come and go as you please? A figure blocked Wu Tong's way with the sharp dagger in his hand fluttering like a butterfly. Wu Tong furrowed his brows and vigilantly looked at the man in front of him. He didn't want to be entangled with him, so he turned around and bolted in the opposite direction, intending to leave this place for the time being. However, just as he ran for a dozen steps, another burly figure blocked his way. God damn it! Wu Tong cursed angrily. This time he didn't evade and directly pounced toward the burly man. His lightning-fast fist also bombarded the burly man's chest. BM! The afterimage suddenly approached him. Wu Tong only saw a blur in front of him. His fist had yet to hit the man's chest, but his lower abdomen seemed to be hit by a huge force. The pain made him feel that his intestines were knotted at this moment. To his disbelief, he could see from the corner of his eyes that he was flying backward, and the scenery on both sides was moving forward. Cough cough. Wu Tong heavily fell on the cold concrete floor 7 or 8 meters away. However, he, who had experienced countless sufferings, endured the pain in his abdomen and pressed his hands on the ground. In the blink of an eye, he stood up again. Chapter 713. Shimei Wu Tong was a ruthless and merciless character. He had fought countless times and crawled out of the pile of corpses, yet none of the situations made him despair. He once firmly believed that there was always a way out. As long as he risked his life to fight, there would always be a chance for survival. However, at this moment, Wu Tong was a bit desperate because he found a serious problem. He seemed to have broken into a dragon's pool and tiger's den, provoking someone he couldn't afford to offend. There were 2 people in front and 1 on the roof. Just their appearance alone made him feel like he was trapped in the camp of thousands of soldiers and horses. What he couldn't accept the most was that these seemingly ordinary guys turned out to have a terrifying strength. Speed and strength. These were originally his advantages, but the opponent's crushing thunderous means made it difficult for him to breathe. You are Tanxio's men? Wu Tong wiped the bloodstain on the corner of his mouth as he vigilantly looked at the 2 people surrounding him, and asked in a sharp voice. However, just as his voice faded away, his pupils suddenly shrunk as he looked at Mo, who was floating down from the roof. That's right, he floated down, defying scientific principles. It was as if he couldn't withstand the force of gravity. His feet stepped on the ground as if he was stepping on cotton. Mo indifferently looked at Wu Tong and lightly said, "Give up resisting if you don't want to suffer physical pain. Come with us." Wu Tong clenched his fists and asked, "Where are we going?" "To see our boss," said Mo. Wu Tong quickly grabbed 3 darts from his waist and coldly said, "Do you really have the confidence to make me stay here? I'm sure you'll be buried with me if I risk my life to fight." Mo disdainfully glanced at him and lightly said, "Since you don't want to cooperate, then we can only resort to violence. Knock him out. I'm going to see the boss first." Having said that, under Wu Tong's angry eyes he directly left. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 figures instantly pounced toward Wu Tong. Their speed was so fast that it was faintly visible to the naked eye. Wu Tong gritted his teeth and fiercely threw the darts in his hand. The ultimate dart skill was a killing move he was extremely confident in. He had never missed within 10 meters. Bang bang bang. The darts pierced through the afterimages, and 2 beast-like auras enveloped him. The terrifying speed and power were fully displayed by the 2 storm-like fists. Wu Tong had a feeling that he had become a human sandbag. He didn't have the slightest ability to resist. He could only feel his body constantly being hit, and his injuries becoming more and more severe. He was in complete despair. He wanted to open his mouth and admit defeat, but his opponent's fist landed on his mouth, preventing him from making another sound. After more than 10 seconds, he lost consciousness in despair and fear, and was knocked unconscious by a heavy punch. Inside the Paradise Manor's general manager's office, Tan Xiao was drinking hot tea while hugging Ouyang Lulu's soft body. His spiritual sense was released outside, watching the beating ladyboy Wu Tong. He was very surprised that Wu Tong, the inferior military monster from the underground fighting competition, would secretly follow him. "Boss, there's a situation." Mo A's voice came from outside the door. Tan Xiao patted Ouyang Lulu's thigh and said, "Bring her here directly. He's been following me for so long, I need to talk to him." "Understood." Mo A made a sound of assent, and did not make another sound. Tan Xiao found that Ouyang Lulu didn't get up. Instead, she wrapped her arms around his neck with a unique feminine fragrance, like a lazy kitten nestling in his bosom. Suddenly, Tan Xiao was at a loss whether he had to cry or laugh. He then said, "Lulu, there's a serious matter to deal with. Get up first." Ouyang Lulu acted like a spoiled child and said, "He hasn't come yet. Nestling in your bosom is too comfortable, I really don't want to move. Dear, tell me, if we turn into fossils and keep this posture until the seas run dry and the rocks decay, how good would that be? If the feelings between two people can last for a long time, how could we stay together day and night?" Tan Xiao said with a faint smile. Ouyang Lulu stared blankly and immediately kissed Tan Xiao's face. She then said with a charming smile, "I never thought that such words would come out of your mouth. All right, then I'll watch from the side." After a short while, Mo Ao carried the fainted she-male Wu Tong to the office. After receiving Tang Xiao's instructions, he woke Wu Tong up and immediately moved to the side. Here, after Wu Tong sobered up, he quickly observed the surrounding environment, and instantly judged that this was the place where Tan Xiao and the woman were. Tan Xiao took out a cigarette. Ouyang Lulu quickly grabbed the lighter and lit it for him. Tan Xiao took 2 puffs and then looked at Wu Tong, whose face was bruised and swollen, yet still looked vigilant. He then said with a faint smile, "The second place of the National Underground Boxing Tournament, Shimel Wu Tong. I'm very curious. What made you come here all of a sudden, stalking me and spying on me?" Wu Tong deeply observed Tan Xiao. He had seen countless big bosses with deep backgrounds and amazing wealth. Those rich and powerful people also had many experts as their subordinates, but none of them could make him so afraid. However, no matter how he observed, he couldn't find anything special about Tan Xiao. "Will you believe me if I say I'm curious?" Wu Tong was silent for a while, and then asked back. "I don't believe you." Tan Xiao shook his head. "Your current situation is not optimistic. I'm afraid that many rich and powerful people in China are now looking for you." Wu Tong disdainfully said, "What ability do they have? Finding me is simply a dream. Confidence doesn't equal arrogance. It seems that you have enough confidence," Tan Xiao said. "So you noticed me because of Han Qinggu?" Wu Tong nodded and said, "That's right. Ice Phoenix is very strong. She's beyond the scope of my understanding of human force. After the underground boxing tournament ended a few days ago, I quietly followed you and left. However, there were some jumping clowns harassing me, so I had to temporarily hide after following you for a couple of hours. Later, when I came to Shanghai, I found that you have a deep relationship with Ice Phoenix. She went to work and got off work as usual, so I had a sudden idea to observe you. But I didn't expect that. You're not an ordinary person." "When did you start following me?" asked Tan Xiao. "This afternoon," Wu Tong said. "At noon?" Tan Xiao slightly furrowed his brows as a glint flashed in his eyes. He first noticed Wu Tong when he was on his way to the Paradise Manor after dinner, but he didn't expect that this guy had been watching him since noon. It seemed that he was very good at tracking and hiding. Tan Xiao thought for a while and asked, "What's your purpose in following Han Qinggu and me?" "I want to know who's the master of this Han Qinggu you mentioned," said Wu Tong with all seriousness. "She's very young, so her master must be very powerful. I want to become stronger and take her as my master." "Become stronger? Taking her as his master?" Tan Xiao was surprised by his words. He carefully observed Wu Tong a few times before he shook his head and smilingly said, You can't learn what she's learning. Your body has been damaged, so you can call it a minor disability. Therefore, I'm afraid your martial arts path can only end here if you don't have a great opportunity. You mean? Wu Tong lowered his head and then quickly looked up to meet Tan Xiu's eyes. That's right. Tan Xiu nodded and said, your yang qi has been depleted, and your fake yin qi has been damaging your body all the time. Your essence, qi, and spirit have been consumed, and even your lifespan has been greatly shortened. You should be less than 40 years old now, but you've passed your peak state. I'm not afraid to divulge some secrets, but you only have 10 or 20 years to live at most. Take care of yourself. 10 or 20 years? Less than 60 years old? Wu Tong's heart trembled, and he glared at Tan Xiu. You're just an alarmist. Tan Xiu shook his head and smilingly said, I can't do anything about it if you really think I'm just an alarmist. Just leave. Wait until you calm down and think about it. Have you felt that your body is getting worse and worse in recent years? No matter how hard you try, you can't be compared to your peak state a few years ago. After thinking it through, find a comfortable place and prepare to die in retirement. Wu Tong's heart trembled. He didn't need to think about it to know that Tan Xiu was right. His condition had been getting worse and worse in recent years. Even the power he could unleash now was far from the time when he was on the verge of death a few years ago. Otherwise, he wouldn't have stayed abroad for more than 20 years, and finally returned to China. He wouldn't have even participated in the underground fighting tournament. He wanted to return to his peak state, and fight martial arts experts to sharpen himself. But the result was that his recovery speed was getting slower and slower, and his fighting power was getting worse and worse. How did you judge it? Wu Tong's expression kept changing, and he finally asked with a dejected expression. I forgot to introduce myself, said Tan Xiu with a smile. Maybe you only know that I'm Tan Xiu, but you don't know one of my identities. I'm a Chinese medicine practitioner, and people call me the young divine doctor. Divine doctor? Wu Tong's body shivered and he looked at Tan Xiu incredulously and exclaimed, how is this possible? I know a bit about the situation in China's Chinese medicine field. How can someone become a divine doctor in his 20s? Even the former divine doctors Hua Tua and Bian Ke couldn't do it, right? There's a saying that you should have heard before that there's always someone better than you out there, said Tan Xiu confidently. Others can't do it, but it doesn't mean that I can't. Wu Tong stared at Tan Xiu. After a long time, under the watchful eyes of Mo Ao and Ouyang Lulu, he knelt in front of Tan Xiu and begged, please save me, divine doctor. You've been fooled by yourself? Tan Xiu looked at Wu Tong with a strange expression, and was at a loss whether he should cry or laugh. Although he was quite confident in his ability to treat and save people, it wasn't worth it for Wu Tong to do this, right? Tan Xiu waved his hand, and a stream of qi wrapped around Wu Tong, pulling him up in an instant. Then he said, I can't help you, so you should leave. But if you can find some herbs to nourish the yin and kidney in the future and recuperate for a long time, you can increase your lifespan. This martial art. I'll leave it at that. Chapter 714. Tan Xiu was not the kind of person who would repay kindness with enmity. He didn't feel like treating this wretch who conspired against him. He gestured to Mo Ao, who then took Wu Tong out of the office. Dear, did you accompany Han Qinggu to watch the underground fighting match a few days ago? Ouyang Lulu's eyes moved away from the closed door, and asked with a faint smile. Yeah. Tang Xiu nodded and said, you can say that I'm accompanying her. She participated in this year's domestic underground fighting match, and even rushed to the finals. To prevent any accidents from happening to her, I went there to keep an eye on her. Fortunately, not only was she safe and sound in the end, but she also won the first place. That's right, that ladyboy just won the second place. Ouyang Lulu could hear it. Despite being somewhat shocked, she still said with a slight dissatisfaction, you didn't take me to such a fun thing? I've seen the underground fighting match in Jingmen Island. It's very exciting. A strange emotion surged inside Tan Xiu's heart. He thought that she was jealous because he accompanied Han Qinggu to participate in the underground fighting match. But it turned out that he was overthinking things. She clearly didn't mean it that way, but blamed him for not taking her with him. After letting out a hollow laugh, he pulled Ouyang Lulu into his arms and kissed her. Then he promised, "I'll definitely take you if there's such a fun thing in the future." "That's more like it." Ouyang Lulu nodded with satisfaction and smilingly asked, "When are we going to Sis Xiaowan's place?" "We." Tan Xiao couldn't help laughing and said, "You're the big boss of Paradise Manor. Yet you want to go with us? Aren't you afraid of making Sis Xiaowan's classmates feel uncomfortable?" "I don't care if they feel uncomfortable or not," said Ouyang Lulu with a smile. "As long as Sis Xiaowan is satisfied, it's fine. Let's go. We'll go now." Having said that, she called the manager downstairs and asked him to take 2 bottles of God's nectar and wait on the first floor. Then she pulled Tan Xiao out of the office. After coming to the first floor and getting the God's nectar, Ouyang Lulu happily pulled Tan Xiao to the catering department. F&B, Fragrance Hall. Chen Xiaowan was different from the past. Her position had advanced by leaps and bounds, and she had been promoted steadily. She had become the vice president of the Brisk Trading Group. This news was no longer a secret among her classmates. Therefore, along with her arrival, more than 20 students greeted her warmly, causing Chen Xiaowan to feel overwhelmed by the unexpected favor. In fact, after graduating for so many years, she had attended a few college reunion gatherings, but they were always boring, and there were only a few classmates she could get along with. However, after every class reunion, everyone would only chat a few more words in the WeChat group or QQ group for the next few days. They did not have much contact with each other. Wei Guotao had pursued Chen Xiaowan for a long time, but ultimately failed to win her heart. He came from a well-to-do family, and was a little arrogant. In fact, it was because of this arrogance that Chen Xiaowan disliked back then. Today, Wei Guotao was already the owner of a textile factory. He could be considered to have inherited his father's business, and was living a comfortable life. After experiencing the ups and downs of society, he had matured a lot, and his arrogance had also been smoothed out by the countless ups and downs in the world. In the past, he had pursued Chen Xiaowan but failed, leaving him brooding over it. Later on, he wanted to continue pursuing Chen Xiaowan, but he gave up the idea when he learned that she already had a boyfriend. What's more, with the wealth and status he had before, he had no shortage of women. However, seeing Chen Xiaowan again, the regret in his heart was evoked again. He looked at Chen Xiaowan, who had become a lot more mature and more beautiful than before. Even though he had been indulging in pleasure in the field of flowers in recent years, it was still difficult for him to calm down. "Belle Chun, you must punish yourself with 3 cups of wine for being late. Even if you're the vice president of a big group, you can't be exempted from this custom." Fatty Wu Zhaoping from the class eagerly pulled the chair next to Chen Xiaowan and cheerfully said, "I'm not a heroic man like you," said Chen Xiaowan with a smile. "I'm afraid I'll fall into Jijia's arms after drinking 3 cups of wine." Jijia, who sat next to her, got up and hugged Chen Xiaowan. After pulling Chen Xiaowan to sit down, Jijia giggled and said, "Get drunk and fall into my arms. This young lady will pamper you well." "Go go go." Chen Xiaowan giggled. As the host of the party, Wei Guotao smilingly said, "Xiaowan, forget about punishing yourself with 3 cups of wine. But you must sing a song when we go to the entertainment club later. If I remember correctly, your beautiful voice attracted a lot of crazy bees and butterflies to pursue you when you were in school." Wei Guotao, among those crazy bees and butterflies, did you know that you were a bee? Or a butterfly? Wei Guotao's breath stagnated and he immediately scolded with a smile. "Fuck you, fatty. You're really touching my sore spot. Do you believe that I won't make you drunk first?" "Who's afraid of who?" Wu Zhaoping looked up and said, "Ha! I don't think 8 to 10 pounds is too much, and 2 to 3 pounds is not too little. I'll accompany you to the end as long as you dare to drink. It's not easy for me to pretend to be a man in front of Belle Chun, so I can't be a coward at this time." "Holy shit, you're shameless, fatty," Wei Guotao scolded with a smile. The joyful atmosphere was much better than the previous years. Chen Xiaowan didn't expect that no one would secretly compare and show off in this year's class reunion. Perhaps it was because they were much older, and everyone had matured a lot. BM. The door of the fragrance hall was pushed open as a well-dressed and tall man walked in from the outside. His handsome face was ruined by the panda eye on his left side. Hey, what's going on with Lu Bo? Everyone in the fragrance hall looked confused, and Wei Guotao hurriedly got up and asked. Lu Bo was still fine when he went to the bathroom 7 minutes ago. How did he come back and look like this? Lu Bo's face was a bit gloomy, but he squeezed out a smile and said, I bumped into 2 drunken bastards. They bumped into me and even shouted at me, but I didn't suffer any loss. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They didn't expect that Lu Bo would be so unlucky to bump into a drunken guest, and even fight with them. Wei Guotao greeted Lu Bo and asked, Are you alright? Do you want me to send you to the hospital? No need. Lu Bo shook his head. What's the origin of those 2 guys? Asked Wei Guotao. How about we find them to settle the account? No need, said Lu Bo quickly. I've already cleaned them up. I believe their companions have sent them to the hospital. Anyways, it's not easy for us to get together today. Don't let this trivial matter dampen our mood. Come on, let's toast. Wei Guotao slightly furrowed his brows. He could faintly see a trace of panic in Lu Bo's eyes and immediately became vigilant. He knew Lu Bo's character. This guy had always been steady and didn't particularly care about his face. The only shortcoming he had was that he was a bit timid. Could it be that there's a follow-up to this matter? Wei Guotao thought about it and suddenly glanced at Chen Xiaowan, who was holding her glass with everyone else. Seeing Chen Xiaowan again made his heart lively again. He knew that Chen Xiaowan had broken up with her boyfriend, and he himself was single. Although he was involved with many women, those women were only interested in his money, and he had no feelings for them. If he could pursue Chen Xiaowan, he would be very willing to get rid of those women, marry a wife, and have children, and live a stable life. The glass of wine was finished. Wei Guotao pondered for a while before he got up, and came to Chen Xiaowan's side. He then leaned over and whispered, Chen Xiaowan, come out. Chen Xiaowan stared blankly for a moment. She looked at Wu Xiaoping and Ji Jia on both sides and found that they were winking and teasing her. She immediately rolled her eyes at them, and followed Wei Guotao out of the fragrance hall. Do you need something? As they came to the corridor outside, Chen Xiaowan looked at the other end of the corridor, where 7 or 8 men were aggressively walking toward them. She slightly furrowed her brows. Wei Guotao also saw this group of people. He instantly realized that they should be coming for Lu Bo. It was because the 2 men in the lead had swollen noses and swollen faces. It was obvious that they had just been beaten. Xiaowan, this is my car key. My car is parked in the parking lot outside. Help me get 2 bottles of good wine from the trunk. Wei Guotao took out the car key and stuffed it into Chen Xiaowan's hand. Chen Xiaowan was somewhat at a loss. She didn't expect that Wei Guotao would call her out for this matter. Originally, she still had a good impression of Wei Guotao. After all, he was a handsome man. Although he was a bit flamboyant in the past, he had never done anything too outrageous, nor did he put on airs and flaunt his achievements in front of a group of classmates. But at this time, a sense of disgust was birthed inside her heart. Why should I go and get things for him? Just because he's a small boss and I'm just an office worker? Chen Xiaowan's expression was a bit unsightly, but she still took the car key. She rarely refused others, so she had already made up her mind to find an excuse to leave after getting the 2 bottles of wine. Wei Guotao was a shrewd man. He could tell from Chen Xiaowan's sudden change in expression that she had misunderstood him. But now was not the time to explain, so after watching Chen Xiaowan leave, he immediately rushed back to the fragrance hall and closed the door from the inside. Then he shouted, Everyone, please be quiet. There's an emergency, so please be prepared. Lu Bo, the 2 people who fought with you before are probably coming with their men. What? Lu Bo's expression turned extremely unsightly in an instant, and the faces of more than 20 students in the hall also changed. Living in a society ruled by law, they rarely encountered violence. They were afraid of being implicated if a fight broke out. Wei Guotao glanced at everyone and sighed inwardly. He had experienced a lot of things and encountered sudden violence many times. He had once hunted in nightclubs and fought with others several times. Due to his previous experience, his mood was still stable. He came to the corner and pressed the pager in the hall to call the waiter to inform the security guards. I recently downloaded Chidian's writer's assistant, and my phone often receives all kinds of comments, votes, and gifts from everyone. I feel warm inside having everyone's support. I sincerely thank all my brothers and sisters for your support. I'll definitely work hard to write and live up to everyone's support. Chapter 7:15. Knock knock. The fragrance hall's door was knocked. Tan Xiao and Ouyang Lulu opened the door. Just as they entered, they saw more than 20 young men and women standing up and glaring at them with hostility. What's going on? Tan Xiao and Ouyang Lulu exchanged glances. The strange reaction of the people in the room puzzled them. Everyone in the room was slightly stunned when they saw Tan Xiao and Ouyang Lulu. Wei Guotao looked at Ouyang Lulu in amazement before his eyes fell on Tan Xiao and asked, "Who are you?" Tan Xiao glanced at everyone but didn't see Chen Xiaowan. He immediately asked with a puzzled expression, "Did we go to the wrong hall? Sis Xiaowan clearly said this is the fragrance hall, right? Are you guys having a class reunion? Where's Chen Xiaowan? Are you looking for Chen Xiaowan?" Wei Guotao was surprised. "I'm Chen Xiaowan's younger brother." Tan Xiao nodded and said, "I heard you're having a class reunion here, so I came to deliver 2 bottles of wine." This time, everyone in the hall looked at each other in dismay. They thought it was Lu Bo's people who came to retaliate, but they didn't expect it to be Chen Xiaowan's younger brother. Wei Guotao had his own plan in mind, so he immediately said, "Little brother, Chen Xiaowan went out to do something and will come back later. Why don't you leave first and wait for her to come back? I'll ask her to contact you again." Sending guests away? Tan Xiao seemed to realize something. He turned his head to look at the 7 or 8 people who had already walked out of the door. The 2 men in the front were cursing and swearing, and then he looked at the vigilant people in the room. He suddenly couldn't help laughing and said, "Did you guys have some conflict with them?" Wei Guotao, Lu Bo, and the others didn't speak, but some of the more courageous men took 2 steps forward and blocked the 6 or 7 women behind them. "Wow, there are quite a lot of people here." The badly battered Bai Sheng staggered into the room. When he looked around and found Lu Bo, he immediately roared, "Damn bastard! Luckily I followed you secretly and knew you were in this hall. Else you would have been able to hide from me. The person who dares to hit me hasn't even been born yet, but you've already jumped out of your mother's womb. Today, I'll definitely beat you back into your mother's womb." Saying, Bai Sheng raised the bottle in his hand and was about to smash it at Lu Bo's stop. Tan Xiao frowned and scolded in a deep voice. At the same time, he instantly moved toward Bai Sheng. Before Bai Sheng could smash the bottle, he had already grabbed Bai Sheng's wrist. "This is Paradise Manor. Think about the consequences before you cause trouble." Bai Sheng scolded angrily. "Where did you come from? Whether I cause trouble or not has nothing to do with you." Pa! A loud slap sounded. Ouyang Lulu lifted her leg and kicked Bai Sheng's chest. Bai Sheng was not tall and his body was not very strong, but Ouyang Lulu's kick made him retreat a few steps and hit the 2 people behind him. "You can curse me, but if you dare to curse him again, believe it or not, I'll break your legs and tie you like a dog at the entrance of my Paradise Manor." Ouyang Lulu angrily shouted. Bai Sheng was kicked in the chest. The huge force made him suffocate. He clearly saw Ouyang Lulu's appearance, but never in his wildest dreams had he ever imagined that a woman more beautiful than a fairy would actually attack him. Not only that, she was even trying to stand up for another man and threaten him. "You!" Bai Sheng wanted to curse, but a middle-aged man beside him pulled him. The middle-aged man indifferently looked at Ouyang Lulu and said, "Listening to your words, you're from this Paradise Manor?" "Yeah, I'm the Paradise Manor's boss," said Ouyang Lulu coldly. "Boss." The middle-aged man stared blankly and suddenly realized something. His complexion greatly changed and his attitude changed 180 degrees. He nodded and bowed as he said with an obsequious smile, "Ah, so you're Miss Ouyang. It's all my friend's fault for having eyes but failing to recognize MT Tai, and unexpectedly bumped into you. A few days ago, I heard from my friend that you have a deep relationship with Mr. Tang, so I brought this friend from Fukong to support you. Miss Ouyang, for the sake of Mr. Tang's face, please don't." Suddenly, his words came to an abrupt halt as he suddenly thought of Tang Xiao, who was standing beside Ouyang Lulu. His expression froze and his mouth opened wide, but he could no longer utter a sound. "It seems that my face is quite big to have you bring someone to support me," said Tan Xiu with a sneer. "I'd like to know who that friend of yours is." Upon hearing this, the middle-aged man's heart felt as though it had fallen into an ice cave. He never thought that the person who was cursed by his companion turned out to be Tan Xiu. Although it was his first time seeing Tan Xiu, his name was like a thunderclap reverberating in his ears. "You're Tan Xiu, Mr. Tang?" "That's me." Tan Xiu nodded indifferently. The middle-aged man squeezed out a smile as his lips squirmed and said, "My friend is Jin Xingkui, and we have a client relationship. He bought the stone materials for his recent project from me. Mr. Tang, my friend just bumped into you. I hope you can be magnanimous and not stoop to his level." Tan Xiu looked at the middle-aged man with a strange expression. He didn't expect that this guy turned out to be a business friend of Jin Xingkui. He also had a share in Jin Xingkui's business, so he also had a business relationship with him. Finally able to catch his breath, Baisheng wanted to flip out again. After all, he was beaten in front of so many people. Moreover, it was a beautiful and dazzling woman, which made him feel ashamed. But upon hearing his companion mention Tan Xiu's name, his body couldn't help but shiver and his drunkenness faded a lot. Are you really Tan Xiu? Tan Xiu of the Tang family?" Baisheng's attitude also changed dramatically as he asked cautiously, "Do you know me?" Tan Xiu frowned. Baisheng's heart thumped and he nearly cried. He was not afraid of the heavens or the earth. He didn't even care about the elders in his family, but he was afraid of a ruthless man. This man was Tan Xiu of the Tang family in the imperial capital. "Tang. Mr. Tang, I'm really sorry. I didn't know that the boss here has a close relationship with you. I'm blind and didn't recognize you. I'm Baisheng of the Bai family, Fukang province." Tan Xiu frowned and asked, "Who is Baiyang to you?" "He's the Bai family's patriarch. I should call him uncle according to seniority," said Baisheng. "I know a bit about the Bai family," Tan Xiu nodded and said. "Whether it's Baiyang or the other members of the Bai family, they are all very low-key. I didn't expect that they would have such an unusual person like you. Hurry up and go back to Fukang province. Don't cause trouble for your family outside in the future." Baisheng wiped the cold sweat on his forehead and hurriedly nodded. Yes. You're right. I'll definitely correct myself later. If you don't have any other instructions, then I'll take my leave first. I'll go back to Fukang province early tomorrow morning." Having said that, the group of people who came with a menacing aura now left quickly with fear and trepidation. The more than 20 people in the fragrance hall were even more dumbfounded. They were so shocked by the series of changes that they couldn't even close their mouths. Tan Xiu turned around and glanced at Wei Guotao and the others. A smile appeared on his face again as he said, "I'm sorry. You've been harassed while dining in our paradise manor. These 2 bottles of wine are for everyone to taste. We still have something to do, so we can't accompany you." God's nectar? Among the more than 20 people, at least a dozen of them knew about wine. They had even seen the packaging of wine, and the highest grade one was God's nectar. They secretly exclaimed inwardly. They didn't expect that the 2 bottles of wine sent by Tan Xiu turned out to be God's nectar. It must be noted that God's nectar was very expensive, with each bottle being sold at 18,888 yuan in exclusive stores. But in private, they heard that many people were willing to buy it at double the price. Good wine was scarce. This was the characteristic of God's nectar. "Mr. Tang, please wait a moment," Wei Guotao quickly called out. "Thank you very much. If it weren't for you, I'm afraid we would have been beaten." "Don't worry," Tan Xiu said with a smile. "We'll guarantee your safety since you chose to dine in the paradise manor." Wei Guotao nodded with a smile. Then he hesitantly pointed to the 2 bottles of God's nectar on the table and said, "We appreciate your kindness, Mr. Tang. But this wine is too precious." Tan Xiu waved his hand and smilingly said, "It's just wine. How precious is it?" Huh? You're here, brother? Lulu, you're here too." At the fragrance hall's door, Chen Xiaowan came inside empty-handed. She originally looked a bit angry, but after seeing Tan Xiu and Ouyang Lulu, The anger on her face immediately disappeared. Ouyang Lulu quickly greeted them and intimately held Chen Xiaowan's arm and said, "Sis Xiaowan, I just learned that you and your classmates are having a party here. Else I would have told the people below to prepare the best room for you." Chen Xiaowan was a bit embarrassed and whispered, "Lulu, there's no need to be so polite between us. It's good for us to have a party here." "Sis Xiaowan, whatever you think is good is good," Ouyang Lulu smilingly said. "In any case, just treat it as your own home since you're here. Count this meal as my treat today. Have a good meal and drink well. I'll pay for all your expenses here today." "Don't? Then it's decided. Else I'll be cursed to death by this little brother of yours." Ouyang Lulu interrupted Chen Xiaowan and smilingly said. Tan Xiu couldn't help laughing and said, "Sis Xiaowan, since Lulu wants to pay for it, just let her be. All right, we won't disturb your dinner. Call me when you're done here, and I'll send you back." After a while Tan Xiu and Ouyang Lulu left, leaving only Chen Xiaowan's group of classmates in the fragrance hall. Just as Chen Xiaowan threw Wei Guotao's car key to him, the voices of her classmates rang one after another. "Awesome. Xiaowan's little brother is really amazing. Awesome. Those guys seem to be so scared that they almost wet their pants. What a nouveau riche. Tan Xiu is really cool. Idol. It would be great if I had such a little brother." Chapter 7:16. Tan Xiu didn't take Ouyang Lulu's money, not because he was a male chauvinist, but because he really didn't need it. Unless Ouyang Lulu could give him billions or even hundreds of billions, he might be able to solve the problem of being short of money for a long time in the future. After chatting for a while, Tan Xiu received a call from Chen Xiaowan. 10 o'clock in the evening. Tan Xiu sent Chen Xiaowan back to the Bishan Lake complex where she lived. Only after her figure disappeared at the entrance of the building did Tan Xiu start the car again. Afterward, he went to the Thompson Villa complex and contacted Shuiyu by phone. He learned that she hadn't rested yet, so he went to the villa. He changed his slippers and took off his coat. Tan Xiu sat on the sofa in the living room and looked at Shuiyu, who was wearing pajamas with her long hair draped over her shoulders, and asked, "Do you have enough money?" "For the time being, yes." Shuiyu nodded. Tan Xiu took out his mobile and transferred 10 million yuan to the bank card he gave to Shuiyu before. Then he said, "I don't have much money recently, so you have to save your money. I just transferred 10 million to the bank card, so I only have 2 million left." "What happened?" asked Shuiyu curiously. "It's nothing." Tan Xiu shook his head and said, "It's just that the business is a bit big and the amount of money invested in the early stage is a bit too much. Maybe it won't be a problem after a year and a half." Shuiyu nodded without a word and accompanied Tan Xiu for a while. Then she hurriedly went to the kitchen, put on a new apron, and cooked her signature medicinal cuisine before returning to the living room. "Do you have time tomorrow? Is there something?" Shuiyu nodded and said, "Actually, I would have contacted you tomorrow even if you didn't come tonight. I found a singular recherche fruit in the medicinal herbs market yesterday afternoon, but the price is too high and I don't have enough money." Singular recherche fruit? Even though Tan Xiu had read a lot of books and memorized thousands of Chinese medicinal herbs, he had never heard of this name. The singular recherche fruit is a kind of spirit fruit that grows in a special area in the Miao region. It's very precious and rare. When I was a child, I heard that my ancestor got 2 singular recherche fruits, which can be used to treat some blood viruses. In addition, it also had a very magical effect on some cultivators from the strange door. I'm not sure about the specific effects. Tan Xiu asked, "What's the price of the singular recherche fruit you found in the medicinal herbs market?" "The shop owner mistook the singular relic fruit for the hoarfrost fruit," said Shuiyu with a smile. "The value of the hoarfrost fruit is also very high. What the boss doesn't know is that if someone with a discerning eye recognizes that it's a singular recherche fruit, they will rush to buy it even if it costs hundreds of millions." Tan Xiu asked in a daze, "You know Chinese herbal medicine?" "We're from the Miao region, so we know more or less about it," said Shuiyu with a smile. "As for me, I've been learning from my grandfather and ancestor since I was young. Even though my medical skills aren't that great, I can still treat common illnesses that are difficult to treat. For years ago, there was a medical book published in the field of traditional Chinese medicine, Miscellaneous Diseases of All Families. Part of it was edited by me. Tan Xiu's eyes lit up. He suddenly became interested and asked, I suddenly feel that there is a business that is very suitable for you to do. Also, if you do it well, you should be able to make a lot of money. What kind of business? Asked Shuiyu with a smile. A fine medicinal herbs dealer, answered Tan Xiu. What do you mean? Asked Shuiyu, confused. As far as I know, there are large Chinese herbal medicine markets in major cities in China, including second and third tier cities, said Tan Xiu. Some precious herbs are mixed with a large number of common herbs in these markets. I once found some very precious herbs from the common herb stalls. You mean picking up scraps? Asked Shuiyu in surprise. You can say that. Tan Xiu nodded with a smile. But your strength alone is limited, after all. You can hire some people to help you find them. It's best if you can give them short-term training so that they can memorize the names, effects, and shapes of the herbs. They can also send you pictures or videos when they buy them, and let you appraise them temporarily. As for whether to buy them or not, you can also control them from a distance. Shuiyu's eyes lit up. Through Tan Xiu's explanation, she found that this was indeed a good way to make money. The most important thing was that even if she made less money, she could buy precious herbs and keep them for her own use. I'll give it a try, Tan Xiu said with a smile. It's up to you how to do it. I'll give you another sum of money within half a month. You don't need to feel any pressure, just think of it as finding something to do. You don't need to give me any more money. Shuiyu gently shook her head. The 10 million you just transferred to me should be enough. Tan Xiu didn't speak again. He took out his mobile phone and searched for Li Jiren's number. He silently stared at it for several minutes, but ultimately didn't call him. He could indeed refine pills that could increase one's lifespan, but it was not easy to get all the medicinal herbs. Although he could still refine a few life essence pills from the batch of medicinal herbs that Li Jiren sent last time, he didn't know the price. What are you thinking about? Asked Shuiyu as she untied her apron and sat next to Tan Xiu. Tan Xiu looked up and asked, if there's a pill that can increase the lifespan of the elderly by 3 to 5 years, what price do you think it can be sold for? How many of these pills are there? Asked Shuiyu. Very few, answered Tan Xiu. I can only refine 10 in a short time. That's already the limit. Shuiyu thought for a long time and then slowly said, the rarer something is, the more precious it is. Nowadays, whether it's at home or abroad, many rich and powerful people in the truest sense have people whose lives are in danger. Even if they can live for 3 more years, I'm afraid they will spend a lot of money. What's the specific price? Asked Tan Xiu as he raised his brows. Tentatively set it at 500 million for one. It should be no problem, said Shuiyu with all seriousness. 500 million? Tan Xiu took a deep breath, took out his mobile again, and dialed Li Jiren's number. Soon after, Li Jiren's hearty laughter came from the phone. Tan Xiu, I'm glad to receive your call. I'm looking for you for something, said Tan Xiu. You know about the life essence pill. If I want to sell you 10 life essence pills at 500 million each, would you buy them? I'll buy them, said Li Jiren decisively. I'll bring 10 life essence pills to Jingmen Island within half a month, said Tan Xiu. If you're sure to buy them, then come to Jingmen Island's everlasting feast hall. As for whether you'll buy them for yourself or sell them to others, that's your business. 500 million is a very affordable price, said Li Jiren with a happy tone. I'll personally go to Jingmen Island and wait for your call. All right, Tan Xiu replied and directly hung up the phone. Shuiyu had just heard the conversation between Tan Xiu and Li Jiren. Although she was very indifferent to money, Tan Xiu's phone call and 10 life essence pills that could be sold at a sky-high price of 5 billion yuan still made her feel a sense of worship from the bottom of her heart. Martial prowess, talent, morality, and making money. Shuiyu analyzed these 4 characteristics inwardly and repeatedly pondered over them. She was sure that Tan Xiu had all these characteristics and was very outstanding. Are you going to concoct some pills next? Tan Xiu nodded and said, I'll go with you to the medicinal herbs market tomorrow. and buy some medicinal herbs on the way. When will the medicated diet be ready? I need to go back early after drinking it. Shuiyu stared blankly for a moment, and then immediately said, "Don't go tonight." Tan Xiao shot her a deep look and shook his head. "There are some things that I can't rush. Maybe I'll have something to do soon." Sure enough, as the medicated diet was cooked, Tang Xiao had yet to finish it when Mo called him and informed him that the military and Austin Cole's group from the Sui Company had a fierce battle near Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals in the Serene Peace District. The military didn't suffer heavy losses, but Austin Cole was injured and 7 or 8 of his men died in the fierce battle. Boss, 2 people suddenly appeared at the end of the fierce battle. They are very strong, almost reaching the level of martial arts grandmaster. After severely wounding several military experts, they left with Austin Cole. They're retreating in the direction of Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals. What did Mouse say? Asked Tan Xiao with a deep frown. Mouse has sent some people to investigate, but there's no result for the time being because the other party retreated too fast, said Mo. However, the 2 of them were wearing armor and left some traces behind when they left. They were right outside the walls of Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals. Tan Xiao took a deep breath and said, "I'll rush over there immediately. Don't act rashly before I arrive." After hanging up the phone, Tan Xiao got up and picked up his coat. He looked at Shuiyu, who wanted to say something but hesitated. Then he said, "I really have something to do today. I'll come to you tomorrow after I'm done with it." "Pay attention to your safety," said Shuiyu quickly. "All right." Tan Xiao replied and left at the fastest speed. It was already 1 a.m. when he arrived at Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals. Although he had expected that this place wouldn't be peaceful, he still frowned after seeing a large number of policemen and armed police cordoning off the nearby area. "Boss!" In a dark corner of the street corner, Mouse stealthily appeared and shouted while controlling his volume. Then he saw Tan Xiao rushing over with Mo's group. "You're finally here, boss. How's the situation?" asked Tan Xiao. "Have you found out the origin of those 2 men who appeared later?" "I can't be 100% sure," said Mouse hesitantly. "But they should be Xie Jiqiang's men according to the traces they left and my many years of experience. Also, after they rescued Austin Cole, they should have fled to Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals." Tan Xiao pondered for a moment before he looked at Mouse and asked, "Then, according to your experience, when will the policemen who cordoned off the scene of the fierce battle withdraw?" "Most of them will withdraw within 2 hours, said Mouse. "But they will still leave some people to monitor the nearby area." A cold light flashed in Tan Xiao's eyes as he said in a deep voice, "Mouse, notify your men to evacuate. Will break into this Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals at 3 a.m. Quiet Night plans to go crazy in the last 2 days. The specific amount depends on the number of monthly votes, as well as Quiet Night's writing status. Brothers and sisters, let's go _. Chapter 717. The first time they sneaked into Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals, Tan Xiao and Mo didn't even enter the innermost sentry post. This time, however, Tan Xiao temporarily refined 10 invisibility talismans, and still didn't encounter any obstruction as they came to the innermost sentry post. Bam, bam, bam. The 6 vigilant security guards outside the sentry post were instantly knocked out by Jin Shi and the others. Tan Xiao unleashed his Bloodguzzler dagger, and instilled his primal chaos force into it to cut the iron gate lightning fast. It was as easy as cutting tofu and the entire heavy iron gate was cut open. As the 11 people entered the building, a number of red alarm lights flashed and issued buzzing sounds inside. Take some men to clean up the trash upstairs. Remember, try not to kill them if you can. Just knock them out, ordered Tan Xiao. Understood. Mo agreed and led the 4 experts up the stairs. Standing in front of the elevator, Tan Xiao coldly stared at the elevator door. Something happened outside and even the alarm went off, so Tan Xiao guessed that someone would definitely rush out. Sure enough, the elevator door suddenly opened half a minute later as 6 men in black armor, and wielding nearly 2-meter-long sabers rushed out lightning fast. Alert! The first man who rushed out exuded a fierce aura. He was stunned after rushing out of the elevator door. Through the internal inspection, there should be a lot of intruders outside the elevator door, so how come there was no one here? However, as Xie Jiqiang's golden hatchet man, his vigilance was still very high. Tan Xiu crossed his arms and stood in front of the first man. Looking at his vigilant eyes, Tan Xiu fiercely punched the man's forehead. Although the man was wearing a helmet, the huge force still dented the helmet and hit his temple. Bam! The armored man fell to the ground, but he wasn't killed by the tremendous force. Just as Jin Shi and the others instantly attacked the other 5 armored men, the man who was knocked down by Tan Xiu shook his head with difficulty and used his arms to prop himself up. Huh? Interesting. Tan Xiu stepped on the armored man's back and pressed him to the ground. Then he sneered and said, "You're quite strong to be able to withstand my heavy punch. The armor's defensive capabilities are pretty good, but it's a pity that it looks a little out of place on you guys." In just a dozen seconds, the other 5 armored men were knocked unconscious by Jin Shi and the others. Jin Shi then kicked the armored man Tan Xiu was stepping on and asked, "This elevator should lead to the underground, boss. Are we going down?" "Go down." Tan Xiu strode into the elevator, and the others quickly entered, blocking Tan Xiu inside. As the elevator descended, the doors opened after more than 10 seconds. When the dozen or so armored men outside the elevator noticed Tan Xiu and the others, the ones at the front were the first to attack. Puff puff puff. Several flying swords were summoned, and with a flash of sword light, the hard armor was easily cut open. 4 or 5 armored men were killed in an instant. The underground space was very large. In addition to the 2 relatively large halls, there were also more than a dozen spacious rooms. In the innermost monitoring room, Xie Jiqiang and Austin Cole had reached an agreement. More than 20 minutes ago, Austin Cole had contacted the European HQ and ordered the head of the SWE finance department to transfer $1 billion to Xie Jiqiang's Swiss bank account. At this moment, Austin Cole's expression was extremely ugly. He had always been known for his fierceness and cruelty, but now, a murderous aura was surging all over his body as he stared fiercely at the monitor screen. The screen showed the scene of the armored men being killed one after another outside the elevator. "Xie Jiqiang, haven't your armored warriors undergone genetic modification and become very powerful? Why can the enemy kill them so easily? Look clearly, the enemy isn't using guns at all. They're using swords. That's right, the ancient weapon that only barbarians use is a sword." Austin Cole turned around and roared angrily. Xie Jiqiang's complexion was livid, and his eyes flickered with a pondering look. He didn't know the origin of these people, but he was very clear about one thing. Given the enemy's strength, the underground base that he thought to be incomparably solid would never be able to stop their footsteps. For now, there was only one way to go: run. He took the gene particles and the 4 most outstanding genetic warriors under him and fled far away. Ming Liang. Immediately send some people to collect the core research data and gather at the 3rd exit as fast as possible. Activate the self-destruct system and set the countdown to 3 minutes. The enemy is very strong, so there's no need for us to tangle with them here. Evacuate first and find a way to figure out their identity later. Xie Jiqiang suddenly got up and walked outside while solemnly ordering. Austin Cole's face was full of anger as he strode to the door. He quickly pulled out his pistol and pointed it at Xie Jiqiang's head, shouting, "Xie Jiqiang, I seriously suspect that you're trying to cheat us. We've bought all the gene particles and research data, and you obviously have a backup copy." Xie Jiqiang furrowed his brows and coldly said, "Please pay attention to your words and actions, Mr. Cole. If I really wanted to cheat you, I would have already sent people to kill you when the SOE company gave me the money instead of waiting until now. Those who were killed outside were my men, experts I trained using gene particles. Aside from the gene particles I used on them, I also made tailor-made armors for them. Do you know how much it costs to make just one set of armor? The total value of a set of armor is $4 million. Just look at how much I've lost." Austin Cole was shaken. He also felt that Xie Jiqiang didn't need to play such a trick if he wanted to cheat them. After all, those genetic warriors were very powerful and loyal subordinates of Xie Jiqiang who had gone through fire and water with him. Rather than using their lives to put on a show, It was better to use them to kill him. After thinking it through, he put away his pistol. And the moment he turned to look at the surveillance screen, a sharp dagger directly pierced through the side of his neck. It was Xie Jiqiang who acted. At this moment, his face was full of killing intent as he shouted in a deep voice, "Kill all the people from the Sui company." Bang, 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 gunshots sounded, but none of the bullets hit anyone. It was Austin Cole's men who opened fire, but in less than 2 seconds, they had already been hit by sharp daggers and knives. A Ming and a Chang quickly killed 8 or 9 of Austin Cole's men, and picked up the 2 suitcases they were carrying. Xie Jiqiang squatted down and patted Austin Cole, who was clutching his neck and twitching. Then he sneered and said, "I don't need to kill you if there were no foreign enemies invading. But you think I'm cheating you, so I'll be sorry if I don't fulfill your wish. If you die, I can shift the blame for your death onto the invaders. It can be considered as taking the blame for me." Calling boss. The self-destruct system has been activated and will explode in 3 minutes. A deep voice came from the walkie-talkie on a Ming's shoulder. Xie Jiqiang abruptly got up and directly trampled Austin Cole to death. Then he said in a deep voice, "Notify the others to evacuate to the 3rd exit immediately. Tell the people outside to prepare the vehicles and leave this place as fast as possible." Outside the elevator of the underground base, Tan Xiao, Jin Shi, and the others didn't show any mercy this time, and killed more than a dozen armored men in just 20 seconds. As dozens of big men in black suits rushed out of the corridor inside with guns, Jin Shi and the others quickly dispersed, each looking for a bunker to attack. Ice needles. Tan Xiao didn't evade, and cast a spell to condense ice needles out of thin air. Every black-suited big man who appeared was pierced by the ice needles. As they quickly advanced inside, dozens of big men in black suits were all killed. Suddenly, 2 burly men with shaved heads appeared in the corridor ahead. The 2 sides suddenly encountered each other, and the 2 bald men instantly pounced on Jin Shi's group at the front. While they were sprinting, they had already pulled out their sharp daggers. Slash! Jin Shi and the others secretly sneered, and controlled their flying swords to sweep the 2 bald men. They were originally determined to kill them, but the 2 bald men instantly dodged it. Trespassers! Die! One of the bald men with a scar on his face grinned and brandished his dagger to stab Jin Shi's face. However, just as the dagger was only a dozen centimeters away from Jin Shi's eyes, 2 ice needles instantly pierced his eye sockets. Aya! A mournful scream came out of the bald man's mouth, and he instantly retracted his fierce attack. As he subconsciously dodged, a flying sword came flying from behind and pierced his waist. Tan Xiao's face turned cold and he shouted in a deep voice, "Go all out in the fight!" Jin Shi and the others looked ashamed and immediately put away their feelings of being rivals in love. They controlled their flying swords to form a sword array and killed the other bald man. 2 minutes later, Tan Xiao along with Jin Shi and the others had arrived at the 3rd exit. Tan Xiao had already guessed that Xie Jiqiang was responsible for the tragic death of Austin Cole and his men, but he didn't have the slightest pity for them. Looking at the closed exit, he sneered and unleashed his bloodguzzler dagger again to cut the entire door. Xie Jiqiang came out of a factory inside Kunuksha Pharmaceuticals with more than a dozen of his men. A sneer appeared on his face as he walked toward the outside of the factory and asked in a deep voice, "Have a Feng and Xiangzi come out yet?" "I'm afraid they can't come out." A Ming shook his head. Killing intent surged in Xie Jiqiang's eyes as he said, "There's less than a minute left before the underground base explodes. Since they can't come out, then let those enemies be buried with them. Have you brought out all the information and gene particles?" "Yes, I have." A Ming nodded. Vroom, vroom, vroom. 6 SUVs quickly stopped outside the factory, and there was only one driver in each car. They were the people arranged by Xie Jiqiang to meet them at the 3rd exit. They could evacuate Xie Jiqiang as fast as possible once something happened in the underground base. Chapter 718. Xie Jiqiang was a very cautious person. No one cherished his life more than him, unless it was a last resort. The moment he withdrew from the underground base, he didn't relax at all since he didn't know whether the enemy had found the 3rd exit or were trying to destroy the closed door. However, when he saw the roar of the 6 SUVs' engines coming to an end as they steadily stopped outside the factory's entrance, he finally felt relieved. The company had a side door that few people even knew about. Even if the enemy blocked the company's entrance, it wouldn't affect him from leaving. Xie Jiqiang stopped in front of the door. He turned his head to look at the warehouse and muttered to himself, "This place will soon turn into hell on earth. You dare to covet my research results? Death is what you deserve." After saying that, 2 cold breaths came out of his nostrils as he turned around to board the SUV in the middle. Ming had been following Xie Jiqiang the whole time. The moment he opened the door for Xie Jiqiang, a strong sense of danger exploded in his heart. Nearly in a flash, he stomped his feet and directly threw Xie Jiqiang backward. Puff! 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 Streams of saber light descended from the sky like the Milky Way, looking somewhat dazzling under the starlight. The 6 jeeps were suddenly struck by the saber lights and exploded with a loud bang. Immediately after, the flames splashed on the broken mailboxes and instantly engulfed the 6 cars. Mo, along with 4 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall, whizzed down from the sky, taking advantage of the time when the SUVs exploded and burned, affecting Xie Jiqiang's men. The 5 of them dashed lightning fast and killed 5 or 6 people in just a few breaths. Fuck off. Liang's muscles tensed up. He had been injected with gene particles and transformed into a genetic warrior. Whether it was his strength or speed, it was something unimaginable even in his dreams. At this moment, he could feel power gushing out from all over his body like a spring. He didn't even take out a weapon and directly punched Mo. In his view, although Mo and his men appeared in such a powerful way, they should have used some powerful weapons. He firmly believed that he could easily kill these enemies if it was a frontal confrontation. Mo neither dodged nor retreated. He punched out fiercely. The moment his fist collided with Liang's, the flying sword flew out of his fist and instantly tore Liang's fist apart. It even went along his arm and directly split Liang in half from the side. Boss said that we have to kill the enemy in the most concise way, with the fastest attack. Kill the enemy and spare Xie Jiqiang's life. The other 4 experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall controlled their flying swords to form a sword array, and quickly reaped the lives of everyone except Xie Jiqiang and Ming. The 6 black suitcases fell to the ground one after another. Xiao! 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 One after another, ghostly figures dashed out of the factory. The moment Tan Xiao waved his arms, a layer of bone-chilling mist appeared out of thin air and covered the burning jeep. In just 6 or 7 breaths, the burning jeep was covered by a thin layer of ice, and the flames were completely extinguished. Boss! A few seconds later, a middle-aged man flashed out and stood in front of Tan Xiao. He respectfully said, "I've dismantled the self-destruct device. The underground base can be preserved." Xie Jiqiang, who had just crawled up from the ground, stared fixedly at Tan Xiao and the others under Ming's protection. But upon hearing the words of the Everlasting Feast Hall's expert, he still cried out in disbelief. "That's impossible. No one can dismantle or stop the self-destruct system once it's activated. I spent a lot of money to buy this self-destruct system from the most black-hearted arms dealer in Country D." The middle-aged man shot a cold look at Xie Jiqiang and sneered. "Others may not be able to do it, but I can. It's because I developed this self-destruct system during my training in a training camp in Country D. All the programming and codes were personally written by me. 2 of the loopholes were also covered up by me." Xie Jiqiang's body trembled. His pupils shrunk as he screamed in horror. You're Shueisha? Damn it. How come the famous Shueisha came to China? And he also has a boss?" Shueisha no longer paid attention to Xie Jiqiang and looked at Tan Xiao again. Tan Xiao nodded and smilingly said, "I was worried that there would be a big mess, but it seems that there won't be a problem now. You've done a good job. You'll be rewarded when you go back." Having said that, his eyes fell on Xie Jiqiang's face and smilingly said, "I've been looking forward to meeting you for a long time, Boss Xie." Xie Jiqiang felt that Tan Xiao was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. He hesitated for a moment and then asked, "Who are you?" "You're very capable, so you deserve to know my name." Tan Xiao said with a smile. I'm Tan Xiao. Xie Jiqiang's expression moved and blurted out. The young divine Dr. Tan Xiao? The magnificent Tang Corporation's big boss? Well, it's easy since you know me, Tan Xiao said with a smile. I'm very grateful for the gene particles you've developed. But once this thing is spread out, it will definitely bring great changes to the world's situation. Hence, I need to take care of this thing for you. Do you have any objections? Just say it if you want to rob me. Why do you have to act like a whore and put up a memorial arch? Xie Jiqiang angrily said. Aren't you afraid of death? Tan Xiao asked with a smile. Xie Jiqiang stared blankly for a moment, and his expression immediately turned very ugly. He had no choice but to bow his head under the eaves. He was indeed afraid of death. Yet he had spent many years and invested a lot of money to develop it, yet it was snatched away just like that. He was so distressed that he could hardly breathe. This was the first time. His anger overcame his fear, so he didn't bow his head in front of Tan Xiao. If my guess is correct, Austin Cole of the Sui Company came to Shanghai to trade with you, no? Tan Xiao said with a smile. He sneaked into Shanghai and committed many murders in order to deceive people, trying to divert the attention of the State Security Department and the police. This account is also on your head, isn't it? Xie Jiqiang didn't deny it. He knew that he wouldn't be able to escape today no matter what he said. I can spare your life if you can help me swindle some money from the Sui Company, said Tan Xiao again. How about this deal? Xie Jiqiang shot a deep look at Tan Xiao and suddenly asked, You really don't want to spread the existence of the gene particle? You really don't want to use it to make money? Absolutely not. Tan Xiao shook his head. I see. Xie Jiqiang let out a bitter smile. To tell you the truth, the Sui Company has transferred $1 billion to my anonymous account in a Swiss bank, but I'll never give it to you. I'm still alive and there's a possibility that the gene particle will leak out. Perhaps you've already sentenced me to death in your heart, right? Because only a dead man can keep a secret forever. Tan Xiao was silent for a moment before he slowly nodded and said, You guessed it right. It's a pity that a talent like you will die tonight. Xie Jiqiang turned to look at Mo Au and the other experts of the Everlasting Feast Hall and sneered. The value of the gene particle is absolutely immeasurable with money. Having it is equal to having money, power, and status. Even if you use it on yourself, you'll still have formidable power. Do you really think that the news won't leak out with so many men coming to rob it? Ha ha ha, men die for wealth, just as birds die for food. Maybe some of your men will sell you out for the gene particle. Tan Xiao sneered, whereas Mo Au and the other 10 experts also showed a disdainful expression. I thought you were very smart, but I didn't expect you to say something so stupid. Tan Xiao shook his head and smilingly said, Haven't you realized something since we started fighting tonight? What is it? Xie Jiqiang frowned. Tan Xiao crooked his finger, and the blood-guzzler dagger rotated around his finger. With a thought, the dagger flashed a bloody light as it pierced Ming's throat and pierced his heart from behind. In less than a second, the dagger floated back to Tan Xiao's finger. Genetic warriors are nothing but a joke to us. Those armored warriors of yours and those 4 very strong men should be using gene particles, right? They've become very strong, but they're nothing in front of us. It's just like pinching an ant to death. All right. I'll give up on extorting some money to keep this place a secret. You can die now. The blood-guzzler dagger flashed and disappeared. After killing Xie Jiqiang, Tan Xiao ordered, I'll give you half an hour to clean up all the security guards outside. Also, clean up the entire underground base again. Don't leave any evidence of murder. Understood. The 11 people, including Mo Au, instantly disappeared. For them, destroying corpses and erasing traces was definitely a grandmaster's skill. In less than half an hour, all the corpses had been disposed of and all the traces of fighting had been erased. Even the explosives installed in the underground base had been gathered. Boss, there are too many prohibited things in the base. I'm afraid it won't be easy for us to get them out quietly. Mo Au came to Tan Xiao with an awkward expression. Tan Xiao pondered for a moment. He then flipped his hand and took out an interspatial ring. He handed it to Mo Au and said, Drop your blood on it to recognize the owner. This ring will be yours later. You'll have to work a few more times to quietly get the things in the underground base, as well as the explosives out. An interspatial ring? Mo's heart trembled and his eyes looked ecstatic. He knew about interspatial rings. He also knew that the boss, the little boss Guyener Elder G, and the others all had interspatial rings. Although he also fantasized about getting one, he didn't expect to get one so quickly. The others around looked envious. Although they also wanted an interspatial ring, no one dared to mention it to Tan Xiao. After all, an interspatial ring was not a common object. It was a treasure in the eyes of countless cultivators. Chapter 719. Looking at everyone's expression, Tan Xiao lightly smiled and said, "As long as you work hard, I'll give each of you an interspatial ring when you reach the late stage of Golden Core." "Thank you, boss." Jin Shi and the other 9 looked pleasantly surprised and cupped their fists to express their gratitude. The smile on Tan Xiao's face turned a bit brighter. Although refining an interspatial ring required several precious materials, among which the void crackstone was very difficult to find, the Everlasting Feast Hall had recently purchased a lot of precious ores. He found that they had bought more than a dozen fist-sized void crackstones from the list of materials Gu Xiaoxue sent him. At this moment, it was a good opportunity to win people's hearts, and he didn't want to waste it. Tan Xiao had already packed all the suitcases that Xie Jiqiang was going to take away into his interspatial ring. After Moao packed all the prohibited items and explosives in the underground base into his interspatial ring, everyone silently left with the help of the invisibility talisman. Although gunshots were heard inside, they were tens of meters deep underground and couldn't be heard from the outside. Hence, the brutal massacre was not known by outsiders. However, the burning of the 6 SUVs still attracted the attention of some people nearby, such as the people from the National Intelligence Department. Chen Bing. He was the frontline soldier fighting in the intelligence network. He had carried out many missions overseas and had achieved excellent results. Not long ago, he was transferred back to the country. Due to the many tragedies in Shanghai, he was transferred here. After his investigation, he had determined that Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals, a subsidiary of the Mind Assembly Technology, was a major suspect. It was likely to be the hiding place of the number 3 leader of a foreign SW company, Austin Cole. "Have you contacted that mouse guy?" Standing at the entrance of Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals, Chen Bing looked at the vigilant eyes of the 4 ordinary security guards and asked the person next to him. "Not yet. He seems to have vanished from the face of the earth. We can't find him. Keep looking. Be sure to contact him," Chen Bing said and turned to the car parked on the roadside. Although he didn't know what happened inside Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals and why there was a short burst of fire, he didn't intend to give up on gathering information. However, it was nearly 4 a.m. now, and the security guards inside Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals should be the most vigilant. He waited. After daybreak, when the security guards inside thought that no one would sneak in quietly, they would sneak in unexpectedly and spy on the information. That was the best time. Blue Star Villa Complex. Tan Xiao had just returned home when he received a call from Mouse. After listening to Mouse's report, Tan Xiao was silent for a while and then slowly said, "Can you confirm the identity of the other party?" Mouse said, "I can't figure it out for the time being, but I suspect that he is from the National Intelligence Agency. Last night, there was a fierce battle near Kunugsha Pharmaceutical Company, so they should be the most nervous ones. Plus, the 2 armored warriors were able to heavily injure the special forces. They must be panicking." Tan Xiao slowly said, "Drag it out. You can contact the other party again in the morning. If the other party wants to buy information from you, just tell them that Xie Jiqiang has fled abroad. As for how he escaped, just say that you don't know. Also, tell them that SW's people have already left. Last night, someone was burning a corpse in Kunugsha Pharmaceuticals. Don't tell them the identity of the corpse, just say it's a foreigner." "I understand. But," Rat replied with a hesitant tone, "if you have something to say, just say it." "I don't like to beat around the bush," Tan Xiao said. Mouse quickly said, "Boss, I sold the information to the military before. If I sell the information you told me to the other party, I'm afraid it will arouse their vigilance. Once this matter is over, I'm afraid they will investigate me. Tan Xiu said. I'll send someone to escort you out of Shanghai tonight. The intelligence network in the surrounding cities will need to be opened. Go to Changxi and stay there for 2 days before moving to another city. Also, I'll send 2 experts to protect you and teach you some disguise techniques. Thank you, boss, said Mouse quickly. Tan Xiu hung up the phone and brought Mo to his study. He took out 6 large suitcases and a small suitcase from his interspatial ring, and opened the small suitcase first. Inside the suitcase, there was a foam base with 6 bottles of green particles inlaid in the deep groove. Boss, are these the gene particles? Mo picked up a bottle and asked curiously after repeatedly observing it for a while. They should be the gene particles, else Xie Jiqiang wouldn't be so cautious, said Tan Xiu. However, we still don't know if the gene particles have any side effects, so we must test it first. I've already thought of someone to test it on the way back. Who are you going to test it on, boss? Asked Mo confused. I'll find a way to get a batch of prisoners on death row from some domestic prisons in the near future, said Tan Xiu. In any case, they're going to die soon, so it's best to use them for the test. Mo's expression changed as he said with a solemn expression. The prisons in our country are somewhat different from those abroad. Whether it's the management system or the attitude of the internal staff, it's very difficult to get prisoners on death row. Why don't I personally make a trip to another country? In other countries, as long as they have enough money, they can get enough prisoners. Tan Xiu gave it a thought and felt that Mo's words made sense. He didn't want to cause trouble in the country, especially not involving the government. It would be very appropriate if he could spend money to get some prisoners on death row from some foreign prisons. Oh, which prison do you think is suitable? What's the purpose of your test, boss? Asked Mo. What I mean is, once the gene particles are used for the test, and it turns out that there are no side effects, and it can greatly increase the strength of the people being tested, how would you deal with them then? There are a lot of options if you want to kill them directly. A large number of prisoners die in the world's top 10 most brutal prisons every year. But if you don't want to kill them and want to put them in an important position, then you'll need to screen them carefully. I can be ruthless toward my enemies. Tan Xiu forced a smile. But it's hard for me to deal with those who have not offended me. If the gene particles have no side effects, I can consider putting them in an important position. After careful consideration, Mo finally said. If that's the case, then there's a prison that's very suitable. Labor Camp 1319, Israel. This was a concentration camp for high-risk prisoners, and the entire prison's information was very confidential. One had once gone to this prison to assassinate a notorious arms dealer. According to our previous investigation, Labor Camp 1319 is just a large prison in Israel on the surface, but only a few people know that 16 countries of the United Nations have signed a top-secret agreement. More than 60% of the world's most brutal and terrifying prisoners will be secretly escorted there. You mean the prisoners there are all terrifying figures? Tan Xiu was surprised. Almost everyone's hands are stained with blood, and 80% of the prisoners imprisoned there will die there. Mo nodded. The number of prisoners in this camp is not many. There were only 1,200 of them 5 years ago. But if all of them are released and thrown into any country, I believe that country will be plunged into a huge turmoil. The world's top assassin organization, the Spectre of Evernight, was destroyed 11 years ago. Its top terrorist assassin, Spectre, is also a terrifying figure that makes the world's leaders turn pale at the mere mention of his name. Butcher, who killed more than 1,000 people with his own hands, is also imprisoned there. Since he's so powerful, why didn't he escape? Tan Xiu frowned. It's not easy to enter Labor Camp 1319, and it's even more difficult to get out. Mo forced a smile. An and I, along with 6 other experts of our everlasting feast hall, used every trick and scheme to sneak An inside. In order to let An escape, we cooperated with each other from the inside and outside. Yet we still paid the price of 1 dead and 5 seriously injured to barely succeed. Tan Xiao couldn't help but gasp. He was very clear about the strength of Mo Ao and Mo An. Even before they became martial cultivators, they were still very powerful. He didn't expect that they would pay such a big price just to assassinate a target. Tan Xiao lit a cigarette. Halfway through, he asked the question he was most concerned about. Since this prison is so terrifying, I'm afraid it won't be easy to get the death row prisoners out, right? Money makes the world go round, said Mo Ao. It won't be a problem as long as we can afford it. How much money do you think we need to spend to get Spectre out? Asked Tan Xiao. It's too difficult without 9 digits, said Mo Ao with a forced smile. I'm talking about US dollars, said Mo Ao with a bitter smile. At least 100 million US dollars? Tan Xiao's pupils shrunk and he asked in amazement. I once heard some news that Spectre had an enemy who was willing to pay 100 million US dollars to go to that prison. His purpose was very simple, to kill him for revenge. As a result, not only did that guy fail to take his revenge, he even lost his life. You mean Spectre killed that guy in the prison? Asked Tan Xiao. That's right. Mo Ao nodded. A smile appeared on Tan Xiao's face as he said, That's very interesting. I'm interested in Spectre now. Let's wait and see. I'm very poor now, and it's simply a pipe dream for me to get someone out of that prison. The most important thing now is to get some money. Shortly after, Tan Xiao opened the other 6 suitcases. 2 of them contained a variety of exquisite instruments, a total of dozens of them. The other 4 big suitcases were filled with all kinds of information. Interesting. Aside from the data of the gene particles, there's even the research data of the armor. It seems like the harvest this time is not only the gene particles. Chapter 720. Tan Xiao had seen the armor worn by the genetic warriors. The whole set of armor was composed of several parts. Although they were connected as one, the joints were connected very well during a fight. Their movements weren't sluggish, and their attack power and explosive power were definitely multiplied. Oh, you should have taken off the armor worn by those genetic warriors, right? Asked Tan Xiao as he put the documents back into the box. Except for 4 sets of heavily damaged armor, I've stored the other 23 sets in my interspatial ring, said Mo Ao. With that said, his mind moved and a brand new armor suddenly appeared in his hand. The armor was neatly folded and stored in a white transparent bag. It was obvious that it had never been worn by a genetic warrior before. Try it on. Tan Xiao's expression moved and immediately ordered Mo Ao. After putting on the entire set of armor, he felt it and said, This armor is not light, boss. It should weigh about 40 kilograms. If an ordinary person were to wear it, let alone fighting, even walking would become sluggish. Those genetic warriors have enhanced strength, so they're suitable to wear this armor. But for us cultivators, this kind of armor is of little value. Do you think anyone will buy this armor if you sell it? Asked Tan Xiao with a nod. Private armed forces are not suitable for this equipment. If you want to sell it, it's best to sell it to the military, said Mo Ao decisively. Tan Xiao didn't want to have too much involvement with the military, at least not now. After thinking for a moment, he took out his mobile and dialed Yuan Jingshuan's number. Tan Xiao, why did you get up so early? Yuan Jingshuan's voice came from the phone. I didn't disturb your rest, did I, Uncle Yuan? Tan Xiao said with a smile. I just need your help with something, so I called you at this time. What is it? Asked Yuan Jingxian. I have a suit of armor that can be used to equip warriors, and I even have the research and development data on it. Haven't you been dealing with the military before? So I want to ask if you can help me sell this armor to the military? Yuan Jingxian was confused. Equip the metal warrior's armor? As far as I know, the military is also researching this type of armor, but I haven't heard of any major progress. Tan Xiao, I won't ask about the origin of this armor, but you have to tell me. How much are you going to sell it for? Tan Xiao thought for a moment and said, I'll sell it as a package. 2 sets of finished armors, plus the detailed information on the successful development, for 500 million. Yuan Zhengxian said. The price is not cheap. How about this? We can't talk about it over the phone, and I haven't seen the armor, so I can't determine its specific value. You should be in Shanghai now, right? I'll rush over today. Let's talk when we meet. Alright, thanks for your hard work, Uncle Yuan. The call ended. Tan Xiao took a new set of armor from Mo Ao and put it inside his interspatial ring along with the documents. Then he said, contact the logistics staff of the Everlasting Feast Hall's HQ in Jingmen Island. Tell them that I ordered them to send 11 medicinal pills that can increase cultivation. You've suffered a great loss tonight. Consider it a benefit for you. Mo Ao's eyes lit up as he complied and left. After putting away the gene particles, Tan Xiao went to the cloakroom and took a set of clean clothes. He then took a bath and changed into them. Since it was still early, he cultivated for 2 hours before he drove out. As he arrived at the Thompson villa where Shuiyu lived, a strong fragrance of medicated cuisine greeted his nostrils. I thought you wouldn't come so early. The medicated cuisine will take more than an hour. Shuiyu was no longer in pajamas but dressed up beautifully. Her presence added a beautiful scenery to the villa. Tan Xiao took off his coat and nodded. Then I'll wait for a while. I haven't had breakfast yet. By the way, I want to ask you something. Do you know the origin of the 6 starlight array? Shuiyu thought for a moment and slowly said, I've read a lot of information and confirmed that the 6 starlight array originated from the Solomon Islands. But I don't know whether the records in the ancient records are true or not. However, I found an interesting thing when I read it. Rumor has it that the 6 starlight array is an array used by a demon god to suppress his subordinates. It's like a cage. A cage? Tan Xiao pondered for a long while before he finally shook his head. He felt that this rumor was unreliable. The 6 starlight array contained profound mysteries and was very different from traditional arrays. He would believe it if it was created by a cultivator of another system. But to say that a demon god used a cage to suppress his subordinates was a bit of a nonsense. Whoever created the 6 starlight array, I'm afraid that his strength is quite terrifying. Perhaps when I reach the peak of the supremacy stage in the immortal world, I might not necessarily be his match. Also, the person who arranged the 6 starlight array in the cave in Kana's Longquan Bay is probably very powerful. Tan Xiao suddenly had the urge to return to Kana's, but he had a lot of things to deal with in the near future, so he could only suppress the impulse and wait for the recent matters to be dealt with before he went there again. Perhaps, standing in front of the 6 starlight array again would produce an unexpected effect in cracking its mysteries. Time fleeted by. As the medicated diet was served on the dining table, Shuiyu accompanied Tan Xiao to finish eating. After washing the dishes and chopsticks, she suddenly said before going out, Tan Xiao, I'm going back to the Miao region in a few days. What are you going to do there? Asked Tan Xiao. First, I want to tell my parents that I'm already your woman, said Shuiyu. They want to remove my name from the genealogy and move my household registration to yours. Also, I need to walk around the Miao region to look for some precious medicinal herbs. What? Tan Xiao didn't expect that Shuiyu would make such a decision. Moving her household registration to his household registration? How should he settle her? Was it possible that he would have to put her household registration in his household registration book? About that, there's no need to go through so much trouble, is there? Asked Tan Xiao with some hesitation. This is the ancestral home, so I must do it. Shuiyu shook her head and said, else I'll be ridiculed by my clansmen, thinking that I'm a trash abandoned by a man. You can rest assured that I'll just move my household registration to yours, so it won't affect you. It's because I asked a friend to help me buy a house in Star City. That friend of mine has some power in Star City, so moving my household registration will be very easy. Tan Xiao suddenly understood and said, I'll send someone to help you with the matter of moving your household registration. There's no need to trouble your friend. As for the medicinal herbs in the Miao region, are there a lot of them? The Miao region is rich in medicinal herbs. Shuiyu nodded and said, some of them are sparsely populated, but the geographical location is very dangerous. There are a lot of precious medicinal herbs growing there. In the past, our people in the Miao region would organize pharmacists to go to some relatively safe places to pick medicinal herbs every year. Tan Xiao thought for a moment and then said, "Tell me before you leave. I'll send 2 experts to accompany you." Shui Yu nodded, but then shook her head and said, "I must tell you before I leave, because I can't go back with my whole body. As for sending someone to protect me, there's no need for that since it's not convenient." "What do you mean by you can't go back with your whole body?" Tan Xiao was confused. A blush appeared on Shui Yu's ears. She didn't dare to look straight at Tan Xiao. After hesitating for a moment, she said in a low voice, "That is to say, I'll lose my virginity." Tan Xiao instantly understood, and a trace of embarrassment appeared on his face. After a dry cough, he waved his hand and said, "I know what you're worried about. Don't worry. The people I'll send to protect you are women, and they're also cultivators. If you want to find precious medicinal herbs in the Miao region, you'll inevitably go to some dangerous places. Having them to protect you will make you feel safer." "All right." Shui Yu gently nodded and took a white mink coat from the rack at the door. She then picked up a pair of sunglasses from the cabinet and asked after putting them on, "Do you need them?" Tan Xiao didn't have the habit of wearing sunglasses, so he shook his head and pushed the door to go out. Shanghai's medicinal herbs market was located on Xiafei Road in Dongpu District. Tan Xiao had been here before and was quite familiar with the place. After finding a good place to park the car, he and Shui Yu entered the medicinal herbs market together. The medicinal herbs market was not crowded since it was not a holiday. Aside from the stall owners and assistants, there were only a few elderly people or customers who came to buy medicinal herbs. "What about that fruit, boss?" Tan Xiao followed Shui Yu to a stall. Shui Yu quickly glanced at it and asked with a frown. The store's owner was young and looked to be in his 30s. He wore a down jacket, jeans, and a cap on his head. Upon seeing Shui Yu's arrival along with a young man with an extraordinary bearing, he faintly regretted it, but still he said, "I'll sell it." "Didn't we have a deal yesterday?" Shui Yu's expression turned a bit ugly. "I brought the money to buy it today, so leave it for me for a day." The shop owner probed. "Do you really want to spend 4 million to buy that hoarfrost fruit?" "Of course I do," answered Shui Yu without hesitation. "If I didn't want to, would I still be able to come back here today?" The shop owner looked regretful and bitterly said, "I asked you for a deposit yesterday, but you only gave me 200 yuan. I thought you were just teasing me. Besides, I thought you were lying when you said you would come here today, so I sold that hoarfrost fruit. I'm so depressed that I lost 800,000 yuan. I really only brought 200 yuan in cash yesterday," asked Shui Yu. You sold that fruit for 2 million? The shop owner awkwardly said. "Yeah. I know that the price of a hoarfrost fruit should be around 4 to 5 million yuan, but that hoarfrost fruit of mine has obviously been stored for a long time, so a lot of its medicinal efficacy should have been lost. So old man Ho was willing to spend 2 million to buy it. I sold it to him." "Who's that old man Hoa?" asked Shui Yu quickly. Chapter 721. The shop owner pointed to the corner in the distance and said, "He's the owner of the best shop in the corner over there. He's also in the medicinal herbs business. Almost all the people who have been doing business in this medicinal herbs market all year round know him. You can go there and ask. You'll know." "All right," Shui Yu replied. She then pulled Tan Xiao's arm and left. She had a bad impression of this shop owner. Such a short-sighted person. Not only did he not keep his promise, but he also sold the treasure at such a cheap price, which really disgusted her. Tan Xiao had never heard the name of the singular recherche fruit, nor did he know how good it was. Although Shui Yu had explained the curative effect of the singular recherche fruit, he only regarded it as a relatively precious spirit fruit. "Don't worry. Since we know who bought it, it's possible to buy it back. At worst, the price will be higher. We can afford it," comforted Tan Xiao. With a firm look in her eyes, Shui Yu said, "I must buy the singular recherche fruit even if there's only a slim chance. I'm confident that I can make you the most sumptuous medicated diet after I get it." "Medicated diet?" The corner of Tan Xiu's mouth couldn't help but twitch twice. Spending millions to buy a precious spirit fruit just to make a sumptuous medicated diet for him. This Xueyu really didn't regard money as money. However, this kind of thing was not common. He didn't feel like scolding Xueyu. After all, she spent a lot of money to buy it for his sake. Treasure collection shop. It was a very ordinary shop with a very ordinary inlaid plaque on its door. The entire medicinal herb store was very big, but the inside looked particularly empty. Except for two young clerks, a man and a woman, who were playing with their mobile phones in a bored manner. There was no one else. The young man was the first to see Tan Xiu and Xueyu. However, his eyes only stayed on Tan Xiu for a moment before shifting to Xueyu. He couldn't move his eyes away for a long time. Ever since Xueyu took off her veil, she had been accustomed to strange men staring at her, so she didn't mind and asked in a cold voice, "We're looking for Boss Hua." The young man seemed to have just woken up from a dream. His pretty face instantly turned red. He had seen beautiful women before, but he had never seen one as beautiful as Xueyu. After all, he was still young and lacked self-control. Therefore, he awkwardly stammered as he recalled his gaffe just now. "Old Hua, our boss, he's upstairs receiving guests." Xueyu gently nodded and said, "Can you take us up? We want to make a deal with your boss." "Oh, all right, you please follow me." In order to hide his embarrassment, the young man stammered a reply and turned to jog toward the stairs. When he just stepped on 2 steps, he suddenly realized that he was running a little too fast, and the guests seemed to be unable to keep up. At once, he paused for a few seconds and secretly glanced back before slowing down his pace to go upstairs. A smile was revealed on the corner of Tan Xiu's mouth. He was well aware of the young shop assistant's performance. If he hadn't experienced 10,000 years of cultivation in the immortal world, and was still the same young man as before, his performance would probably not be any better than this young shop assistant. On the 2nd floor, Hua Siming's office was located in the innermost part. Usually, apart from receiving important guests, ordinary people were not allowed to enter this office. The decoration here was very exquisite, and the wooden furniture and cabinets were also very well placed. Sitting on the mahogany coffee table, Hua Siming stroked his white beard as his astute eyes constantly glanced at the guests who were appraising the medicinal herbs on the opposite chairs. 2 guests, the hoarfrost fruit is definitely a good thing. I've been operating in this medicinal herb market for so many years, but I've only got 2 hoarfrost fruits in total. This is the second one. Moreover, the 6.5 million I quoted is absolutely fair. Of the 2 guests, one was an energetic old man in a traditional Chinese suit, and the other was a charming young woman. If someone who had participated in the underground fighting competition was here, they would definitely be able to recognize her. She was the host of the underground fighting competition, Black Widow. The old man in the tang suit stared at the spirit fruit in his hand, and secretly despised it. Hua Siming mistakenly thought that this spirit fruit was a hoarfrost fruit, but he was very clear that this was a singular relic fruit that was very similar to the hoarfrost fruit. However, he came to Shanghai's medicinal herb market this time to look for the Millennium Wild Ginseng, but he didn't expect to encounter such a precious spirit fruit. The most important thing was that he seemed to be able to pick up a big bargain. He was too lazy to tell Hua Siming the true value of this singular relic fruit. Knock knock. The door of the office was knocked. The young shop assistant carefully opened the door and poked his head in to look inside. When his eyes fell on Hua Siming, he immediately pushed the door open and said, "Boss, there are 2 distinguished guests. They said they want to make a deal with you." Hua Siming didn't expect that a well-behaved shop assistant would rush in. He was about to scold him, but after hearing his words, Hua Siming suppressed the anger in his heart and asked in confusion, "Distinguished guests? Make a deal? Who are they?" At the door, Tan Xiu and Xueyu appeared. As they entered the room, Xueyu's eyes instantly fell on the singular relic fruit in the hands of the old man in the tang suit. A glint flashed in her eyes as she said, "You're Boss Hua, right? My name is Xueyu, and I want to buy that spirit fruit from you." Hua Siming was stunned and a series of question marks appeared on his forehead. He happened to find the hoarfrost fruit yesterday and spent some money to buy it. He didn't expect that he would encounter two groups of guests interested in the hoarfrost fruit this morning. However, this was a good thing. Hua Siming was a bit excited. There was a market only when there was competition. If these two groups of people were determined to get the hoarfrost fruit, then they would definitely compete with each other on the price, and he would be the one who would benefit in the end. The old man in the tang suit turned his head and looked at Tan Xiao and Shuiyu. Before Hua Siming could speak, he said, "Young lady, you came at a bad time. I've taken a fancy to this hoarfrost fruit. You can look elsewhere if you need it." Hua Siming's expression slightly changed and he quickly said, "You didn't say that you want to buy it, old Mr. Situ. Since you didn't say that you want to buy it, then they have the hope to buy it. You see, they have already given their answer." The old man in the tang suit slightly furrowed his brows and a cold light flashed in his eyes. How could he not hear that Hua Siming wanted him to compete with the two young people who just came? Although he didn't like Hua Siming's means, he had to admit that he didn't agree to buy it. He somewhat regretted it, but now was not the time to do so. Let alone 5 million, he would buy it even if it was 65 million. However, he didn't want to be a sucker, so he slowly got up and looked at Tan Xiao and Shuiyu, saying, "Both of you, no matter what you do, you should pay attention to the order of arrival, first served. This hoarfrost fruit is already in my hands, and I also intend to buy it. Therefore, I hope you won't get involved." Black Widow didn't know Tan Xiao. After all, there were many guests during the underground fighting match, and she didn't have the time to remember everyone. As the old man in the tang suit got up, she also hurriedly got up and looked at Tan Xiao and Shuiyu, saying, "Gentlemen, let me introduce you. This is Senior Situ Hong of the Situ family in the imperial capital. Even the Situ family's patriarch has to call him second uncle." Shuiyu frowned. She could hear that the old man introduced Situ Hong to use the Situ family to put pressure on them. Similarly, Tan Xiao, who stood next to Shuiyu, could also hear the meaning. "Situ Hong? You must be determined to get it, right?" asked Tan Xiao slowly. "That's right. I need this hoarfrost fruit." Situ Hong nodded. "Boss Hua and I have reached an agreement on the price." Tan Xiao shook his head and said, "If that's the case, then I'll eat less medicated cuisine. I have some friendship with your Situ family, after all, so I can't reject your face at this time." Presumptuous. Black Widow's expression changed and she angrily rebuked. A bit of anger appeared on Situ Hong's face, along with a bit of astonishment in his eyes. He didn't expect that Tan Xiao wanted to buy this singular recherche fruit just to eat a medicated cuisine. It must be noted that even if they didn't recognize it as a singular recherche fruit, and bought it as a hoarfrost fruit, it would still cost 5 to 6 million yuan. Hua Siming felt a bit regretful inwardly. He thought that these two young men would compete with Situ Hong on the price, and he would eventually benefit from it. He didn't expect that the young man would directly admit defeat. Sighing inwardly, he waved and said, "Since you can't afford to buy it, then go downstairs and wait for me. I'll entertain these two guests first, and then I'll entertain you later." Shuiyu was a bit unwilling, but after hearing Hua Siming's order to expel them, she hesitantly said, "Tan Xiao, I really want to." Tan Xiao interrupted her. "Wasn't it just a medicated cuisine? It was fine to eat it once, but there was no need for him to challenge the Situ family's elders for such a trivial matter. Besides, he was very poor now. Apart from the 10 million yuan he had given to Shuiyu, he only had 2 million yuan in his bank account. Once he went tit for tat with Situ Hong on the price, he would be the one who would lose face in the end. "Let's go." Tan Xiao reached out to grab Shuiyu's shoulder and turned to walk toward the door. "Wait." Situ Hong's complexion slightly changed as he chased after Tan Xiao and called out. Tan Xiao turned around and said with dissatisfaction, "We've given up. What else do you want?" Situ Hong said with a probing tone, "This young lady just called you Tan Xiao? Are you the young divine doctor of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital, Tan Xiao?" Tan Xiao lightly said, "I never thought that I'm quite famous. Even the second uncle of the Situ family's patriarch knows my name." Situ Hong's complexion completely changed. A complicated expression appeared in his eyes as he said, "It turns out to be you, Grandmaster Tang. I didn't know your identity, Great Guru Tang, so I hope you can forgive me if I offended you. I do want to buy this hoarfrost fruit, but I'd like to give it to you as an apology. Chapter 722. Upon hearing Situ Hong's words, Tan Xiu was stunned. But then, he realized that this man probably knew about his identity as a cultivator. After all, whether it was the talismans he sold to the Situ family, or the matter of him killing Jin Sanqi, Jin Sijia and Daoist Qianquan, as well as sending people to wipe out the 8 major families of the Strange Doors, it was likely that the Strange Doors family had already investigated it. He's afraid of me. Tan Xiu shot a deep look at Situ Hong and found fear surging in his eyes. He immediately forced a wry smile inwardly. At the side, Shuiyu stared blankly with a surprised look on her face. Hua Siming was even more dumbfounded. He really couldn't figure out why such an old man would buy a precious spirit fruit out of his own pocket, and then give it to someone else for free? The most ridiculous thing was that he seemed to be afraid that the other party wouldn't accept it, so he even apologized. Black Widow, on the other hand, was dumbfounded with a look of disbelief in her eyes. She simply couldn't believe her ears. In her eyes, the most distinguished ancestor of the Situ family, who she considered to be aloof and remote, actually spoke to Tan Xiu with honorifics. What was most unacceptable to her was that this ancestor of the Situ family seemed to be afraid of the young man in front of her, and even flattered him. What kind of situation was this? Could it be that with the status of the Situ family and the ability of this ancestor, there was no one in the entire Wuxia that could make him dread? Black Widow was afraid that Situ Hong was old and muddled, so she immediately reminded him after sobering up. Senior Situ, did you make a mistake? I'm not muddle-headed, nor did I make a mistake, said Situ Hong resolutely. My attitude toward Grandmaster Tang just now was a big mistake, and I must correct it. That's why I must compensate Grandmaster Tang with this spirit fruit. With that said, he chased after Tan Xiu and presented the singular recherche fruit with both hands, saying, Grandmaster Tang, please don't stoop to my level and be magnanimous. I'm sincerely apologizing. I hope you can accept it and give me a chance to make up for my mistake. Tan Xiu didn't know whether to laugh or cry as he looked at Situ Hong. Since Situ Hong had already said so much, Tan Xiu didn't want to refuse again. After taking the singular recherche fruit, he smiled and said, Situ Hong, right? The people of the Situ clan are really good, and they always satisfy me. Fine, I'll accept this singular recherche fruit. Situ Hong's face lit up with joy. He said from the bottom of his heart, It's my honor that you can accept it. It's almost noon. I wonder if I can have the honor to invite Master Tang for a meal? Tan Xiu thought for a while before shaking his head and said, Forget it. I still have something to do later, so I'll skip the meal. However, for the sake of this singular recherche fruit, I will give you a big gift. In half a month, you'd better go to Hong Kong and look for Li Jiren. I'm sure you'll find something there. Li Jiren? Situ Hong stared blankly for a moment. He really knew Li Jiren, and even had a bit of friendship with him. Although he didn't know what the big gift Tan Xiu was talking about, he still respectfully said, I'll definitely visit Li Jiren personally when the time comes. Tan Xiu nodded and said goodbye before leaving with Shuiyu. The purpose of his visit to the medicinal herbs market was for this singular recherche fruit. Now that he had gotten it, he didn't want to stay here any longer. Inside the office, Situ Hong was not in a hurry to leave. His old face revealed an expression as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. Even after he sat back down on the sofa, the wrinkles on his face had already stretched out, and a smile climbed onto his face. I don't understand, Senior Situ. Black Widow gritted her teeth and said after sitting down. Hua Siming also didn't understand, so he also said, I don't get it either. Though I know that Tang Xiu is a young divine doctor in the Chinese medical field, and even I admire him a bit, I still can't figure it out. With your identity, why would you act like this in front of him? So cautious? So respectful? So flattering? Situ Hong glanced at Hua Siming. The smile on his old face didn't change as he said, If he's an ordinary person, he's indeed not qualified to make me act like this. But who is he? Is he just a young divine doctor in the Chinese medicine industry? Ha ha ha. How honorable is his identity? That's something you can't even imagine. Forget it. It's better if you don't know some things. In short, remember that you must never offend him in the future. You must even treat him like a little ancestor. Humph. Hua Siming snorted disdainfully inwardly, but he didn't refute Situ Hong's words on the surface. He was just a medicinal herbs merchant and an old man. He wouldn't be as shameless as this Situ Hong in front of him. Also, was the Situ family very famous? He knew a lot of big families in the provinces, but he had never heard of a big family surnamed Situ. Black Widow, on the other hand, attached great importance to Situ Hong's warning. After nodding heavily, she looked at the direction of the door with a somewhat complicated expression. She knew Situ Hong's status in the Situ family. Even a casual word from him could make the Situ family's patriarch flatter him with a smile. His status in the strange doors was absolutely a figure of Mount Tai and the Big Dipper. Who wouldn't be respectful in front of him? But who exactly was this Tan Xiao? Inside the medicinal herbs market, Tan Xiao originally intended to leave directly, but Shuiyu said that she still wanted to buy some auxiliary herbs for the medicinal cuisine. Therefore, he had no choice but to follow her to look for and buy the herbs in the shops and stalls. In just half an hour, he saw that Shuiyu had spent more than 270,000 to buy those auxiliary herbs. What a wastrel! Tan Xiao couldn't help but secretly shake his head. Finally, when the last medicinal herb Shuiyu wanted to buy was packed, she said with a slightly regretful expression, "I've bought all the herbs for the medicinal cuisine. It's a pity that this place isn't in the Miao region. Otherwise, the most important auxiliary herb, the ginseng, wouldn't need to be replaced by this artificially cultivated ordinary ginseng." "I say, eldest miss, do you know the price of a wild ginseng?" Tan Xiao forced a smile. "Take the Millennium Wild Ginseng, for example. It's impossible to buy it without 9 digits. You said before that the value of the singular recherche fruit is more than 9 digits. If you use the Millennium Wild Ginseng as the auxiliary herb, you'll have to spend 200 to 300 million yuan to cook a medicinal cuisine. Isn't this a wastrel? Even the richest man in the world won't be able to withstand your tossing and turning." A smile was revealed on the corner of Shuiyu's mouth. Although she was carrying a lot of medicinal herbs, she still moved closer to Tan Xiao and chuckled. "The medicinal cuisine I'm going to cook this time is not the usual one for you. According to the ancient records of my clan, this is already a divine-level medicinal cuisine. It's like a miraculous elixir that has great benefits for those who take it. Even if I want to drink it, I'm afraid I won't dare to drink too much." "Why?" Tan Xiao was puzzled. "My body's strength can't withstand the medicinal effect," said Shuiyu. Tan Xiao's eyes lit up. He pondered for a moment and resolutely said, "Since you really want to cook a perfect medicinal cuisine, then I'll follow your heart. I have the Millennium Wild Ginseng. I'll give it to you when we return to our residence." "Really?" Shuiyu's expression greatly changed and she asked excitedly. "Of course it's true. When have I, Tan Xiao, ever lied?" Tan Xiao snappily said. "But you gotta take it easy, Millennium Wild Ginseng. It's so difficult to get this kind of wild ginseng nowadays." 4 hours later, at Thompson Villa, although Tan Xiao was sitting in the living room, a strong medicinal fragrance still drifted out from the kitchen door and floated throughout the hall. Whether it was after he came back from the immortal world, or when he was in the immortal world, he had eaten a lot of delicacies. But this time, just the fragrance alone had aroused his appetite. Such a situation was really rare. "Wash your hands and eat." Shuiyu came out of the kitchen with an apron and a purple clay pot in her hand. When she came to the dining room and followed Tan Xiao to wash his hands, she carefully opened the lid of the purple clay pot and quickly scooped a bowl of fragrant medicinal cuisine. After putting it in front of Tan Xiao, she hurriedly said, "You're a cultivator and very powerful. So pay attention when you drink it. Don't ignore the medicinal efficacy contained in the medicinal cuisine, just because of the taste." Tan Xiao smiled indifferently. Just as he was about to pick up the bowl and drink it, he saw Shuiyu grab a small spoon and scooped a spoonful of medicinal cuisine from the clay pot. She then stuck out her pink tongue and carefully licked it. That's right. She licked it. Tang Xiu was accustomed to Shui Yu's solemn and aloof appearance. At this moment, seeing her lick the medicated diet with her pink and fragrant tongue unexpectedly gave him a different kind of seductive feeling. He even had a strong impulse that burst out from his lower abdomen. Damn it! Tan Xiu hurriedly lowered his head and silently recited the clear mind art to suppress the hot and dry feeling. Drinking the medicinal cuisine was the most important thing at the moment. After all, the amount of medicinal cuisine was less than 2 bowls. Yet it cost a huge sum of 200 to 300 million yuan. What a waste! Tan Xiu drank a mouthful of the medicinal cuisine, with a bit of heartache. When he swallowed it, a scalding hot torrent instantly burst out, as though it turned into thousands of strands of heat that flooded his limbs and 5 organs like a tide. Drink it quickly, Tan Xiu. Once the lid is opened, the medicinal efficacy in the medicinal cuisine will be lost at a much faster rate. The earlier you drink it into your stomach, the more medicinal efficacy will be retained. Shui Yu finally stopped licking the medicinal cuisine and carefully took a small sip. After drinking it, she looked at Tan Xiu and said. Tang Xiu stared blankly for a moment before gulping down all the medicated diet in the bowl. Under the worried expression of Shui Yu, he directly filled a small half bowl for her, and then poured the rest of the medicated diet in the purple casserole into his own bowl, and gulped it down into his stomach. Hot! After Tan Xiu drank the medicinal cuisine, the only feeling he had was heat. Not only the surface of his body, but also the inside of his body. Even his internal organs seemed to be wrapped in a monstrous heat wave. At this moment, despite Tan Xiu's strong willpower, he was still dizzy from the sudden burst of medicinal efficacy. His whole body seemed to have turned into a big furnace. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.